And welcome into episode 3 of AAPI VTuber Talks. I'm your host, AtramentumX, variety streamer, YouTuber, and Asian American. This is episode 3, and we're talking about the story of Asian Americans coming to America. The story of Asian Americans coming to America is fraught with many tales of displacement, war, and racism, unfortunately. We want to tell some of those stories tonight. And we'll be having my co-host, Cootie, here join me for that. Cootie, say hi.
Hello, everyone.
Cootie was on last year's Asian Masculinity show, and I've asked him to come back on to this episode to join me to bring the historical perspective to some of the things that we were going to talk about today. I did not know this initially when I planned this episode, but on April 30th, 1965, the Saigon, now known as Ho Chi Minh City, fell, which led to hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese, Laotians, and Khmer people fleeing Southeast Asia on the boats and heading to the United States and Canada as refugees. That was one of the largest displacement of Asians into the United States, and it also happened at the same time as the 1965 Immigration and Naturalization Act, which was the first time in, I think, a couple of decades that Asians were allowed to immigrate to the United States. So both milestones are marking their 50th year this year in 2025, which frankly is not that long ago, all things considered. A generation, maybe two.
Ooh.
But enough about that. We'll have some time to dig into the history of both ourselves and Asian American in general. We're going to do some introductions. I'll start off. My name's Atramentum. I am Indian American by way of the Caribbean. I am fifth generation Indian American. I was born in New York. I'll take it over to Cootie. Tell chat about a bit about yourself.
Hi, my name's Cootie. I am a Korean American. I moved here from Korea when I was younger. So, first generation, Gen Zero, whatever you want to call it. I always get those mixed up.
I think first generation.
Okay. So yeah, first generation.
Or is it 1.5? I'm actually not sure now that I think about it.
1.5.
Yeah, you might be 1.5. I have to look this up.
Somewhere in there.
There's a distinction when you move here. I think it's 1.5 actually.
As opposed to what?
One, which is you were born. Wait, actually no. Hang on.
Would I be 0.5? 1? 0?
Oh man, we
I am
just started the
nothingness.
episode. We're already doing fractions.
You didn't say there was going to be math involved. You tricked me.
I'm sorry. You have to know this is coming.
No!
Not the math.
They always find a way.
But yeah, as I previously mentioned, Cootie was on last year's, the first episode of API VTuber Talks, an absolute banger episode that went for 4 hours.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
It's good times. Good times. Thank you.
Next up, also returning to AAPI VTuber Talks is Manta Ray.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name's Manta Ray. I go by Manta Ray VT on all platforms. I'm a variety streamer, and I am Palau's #1 VTuber.
We welcome back to the podcast Palau's #1 VTuber. Manta Ray uses they, them pronouns, and they were on last year's LGBT and Proud, Asian and Proud episode. Welcome back, Manta.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Making their first appearance on the pod is Awu Susu.
Hello. I am Vietnamese American, and we are still in the process of trying to figure out if we are like Gen 1, Gen 0, Gen 1.5, Gen 0.5. I don't know, but I got into America around 7 years ago. It has been a pleasure to be in this country and a pleasure to be on the show. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I think that makes you the most recent Asian American to be on the show, actually.
Yay!
Which is both an interesting honor and, frankly, a fascinating perspective. We look forward to hearing from you today.
I'm gonna have the freshest perspective ever.
And for an also fresh perspective, coming back from last year's The Masculinity episode is Uncle Yuichi Aizawa.
Yes. He's already said my name, so I don't get to say my name anymore, but you guys know who I am. Not sure if I mentioned before, but I am Vietnamese American. I was born here in the U.S., so my family came here, and I'm the first generation that was born here on my family.
Absolutely. Yui is Vietnamese American, and along with myself, part of the older generation of VTubers as well. Welcome back, Yui.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we had the opportunity to say what our backgrounds were, but I do want to also just give us a chance to talk a bit about how and why our parents came to this country, or why you yourself came to this country as well. So the first question I'm going to start us off with, and by the way, chat, you may ask questions at any time of our panel. I'm going to get a question box up at some point if you want to ask your question anonymously, but feel free to just shout it out in chat. So yeah, the question is, what were the circumstances that made you or your parents seek to come to America? Do you think you or them would make the same decision in 2025? I mean, I'll start. So although I am Indian American, ethnically Indian, my parents are from at the time, very poor South American country called Guyana. There was no economic opportunity, but they were educated. And my father was a government worker who got a green card from his brother to come to New York. And my mother was like, bet. So they got married, came over here for the economic opportunity, had me, and I was a first generation American. And I think they would do it again because, frankly, it still remains a bit of a poor country. And there was just a lot of opportunity here in America. And there was not a lot of opportunity in that colony down there, unfortunately.
That's real.
Real.
How about you guys?
I can jump in. I believe that my folks would probably make the same change. So some people know this, some people don't. I was originally blonde, and during the time that I was growing up inside Korea, xenophobia is and really always has been kind of a thing in Korean culture. So having mixed blood is, as they see it, is, a giant, scarlet letter on you, right? Mm-hmm. And my scarlet letter was extremely bright blonde hair, like blonde hair. Which caused me to have a lot of conflicts as a child with people that were much older than me. Anything from being beaten by teenagers to having, if I went out with a toy, having my toys stolen, being treated differently. Not to paint the entire country as being that way, because I did have a lot of people that, I was a very respectful young child. So a lot of the elders eventually ended up warming up to me, but a lot of the younger generation really kind of fell into old racist trends. I've had bricks thrown at me from the top of gates. So in some traditional Korean homes, we have gates, large stone gates that surround our property, and I would have bricks and stone thrown off of the top of those at me as a child. So between that and the lack of opportunities for someone at that time, growing up with my background, we decided to come to America to, hopefully have a bit more tolerance. Which, that worked out in different ways.
It's interesting you mention that, because I was reading up on the Korean adoptees. If you're watching this, by the way, chat, you might have heard the discussion for episode 2 about the adoptees and sort of the back and forth we had. I did some reading, and it turned out that the first Korean adoptees were mixed-race children. The government of Korea tried to essentially get all the mixed-race kids out of the country. The kids that were the product of the GIs and the Korean women. And when those dried up, they started going after the kids that were developmentally disabled or from poor families or single moms, and it eventually spiraled into an industry of like a baby factory essentially. But I do wonder if they hadn't purged those mixed race kids from South Korea, if your experience might have been different, you know?
Yeah, I mean, so Korea now has, and this is kind of looping into other parts, but a good example is Korean American deportees, right? If you're born in Korea, you move to the United States, and you get in trouble before you get your citizenship. You get deported back to Korea, even if you don't speak the language. And it's caused this giant influx of really displaced individuals, where there's basically like a Korean American town in Korea where a lot of these displaced individuals would kind of gather and try to, like, you know, show solidarity towards each other, to support each other as newer, you know, deportees are coming in. They have somewhere that they can kind of call home and start acclimating. And it's less frowned upon now, mostly because of birth rate, if we're going to be completely honest.
They need as many Koreans as they can get.
Yeah. It's almost like East Asia is falling apart because of birth rate right now. But yeah, like it's becoming a lot more tolerated, is a word you could use for it. But the younger generation typically seen as a lot less xenophobic than, you know, even, you know, people of the generation slightly before me, for example.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. How about the rest of you?
Well, I can try to go. It'd be interesting on my end. I believe my mother side would still come, mainly because my great-grandparents worked with the French.
Oh.
On my mother's side. Yeah, so they were probably among those that would have to leave. My grandmother worked with the Americans, so she was on base to the very end. She was brought over on a helicopter. She came back with the Americans.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. So that's my mother's side. My father's side, if it was now situation, he might have not left, because the reason he left was he was the sixth child. There was lots of kids. He was from a fisherman's village, and they wanted an opportunity, so they popped onto a boat. And I think half of them didn't make it. They got kicked back, and they were forced back into the village, while the other half, him and his brother, made it over.
So was this around like 1965 or slightly later, or?
I'm not sure on the time period when they left. I just know that I know my grandmother was the last one to leave, because the whole point of, like, I have my mom and my aunt. They came together and they got separated on the ship on the way here, because my aunt had her and two of my cousins. My mother was was much younger at the time, so she was unmarried. She was like teen at best. So when she and my dad came over, they were both young. So they were probably, if I remember correctly, around 12-ish, if not a little bit more. And they were raised by an American family when they got over here. And
Yes.
my grandmother had to hunt my mother down. It took a while
Oh,
because
really?
they got separated. Yes. So what happened was my grandmother hated my dad
Oh.
because he was an uneducated boy from a fisherman village who graduated from the first grade. He never made it past the first grade. My grandmother she spoke 3 languages. She spoke Vietnamese, French, and English. Her English was better than my mother's generation. She had very high expectations. We had back in the day, from my understanding, we had a house in Saigon that was 2 stories. He brought home lots of gold, which he gave to the other family members. And yeah, so she definitely, that side would definitely, I can't see them not coming over here.
Right.
My dad might have stayed.
Hmm.
Things are quite a bit better now from last I seen.
It's very interesting because, like, I was lucky to go to Vietnam right before COVID, actually. I was in the north, and you definitely see, like, some of the wealth coming in, the big factories. I saw the Samsung, like, mega factory near Halong. It's definitely, but you also see the scars, too. You see, like, the bridge that's been bombed out that they still use, but only, like, for motorbikes because cars can't go on it. It's an interesting sort of place, I guess. It is funny, though, because I remember there was a... Oh, hey, Manta.
Don't mind me.
Well, there.
Hello.
I remember
That
the
is
tour
not my
guide-
tale. Where did that come from?
I remember the tour guide telling a story of how they repopulated the south after everyone left. They promised people in the north a motorbike and a house if they moved down south because of all the people who left.
Back in the day, that means a lot.
Yes, it meant a lot, apparently.
Well, they actually took our house.
I'm
Oh,
sure
man.
they did.
Yep. And my grandma wanted a picture of her old house, so one of the things we had to do when we went back was we had to hunt down her house and take a picture of it so she could see how her house looked. They apparently expanded it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But, you know, it's not hers anymore, so.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard stories of family heirlooms being displaced and given to like museums, for example, after a lot of those families were vacated.
Yeah, I mean, like, the smugglers basically just took whatever you had on your back, and who knows what happened after that.
Yeah, I remember some of the stories from when the boats were heading over. I've heard so many stories, I can't even keep straight who's was whose, but I do remember there are times where people were telling me that they left with 3 boats, and they would watch each of the boats get taken out on the way, and they were saying that they were the last boat that made it over. Because there are people that were looting or taking people from the ship or attacking the ships.
Pirates, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
I'm gonna let Manta and Susu tell their stories.
I can jump on that boat, connecting the Vietnamese side.
Mhm.
So, I was always a very artistic kid, and even though my family was raised to be a very artistic family, so we didn't have the main issues of like most Asian family when a child wants to go into art, be like, no, you can't do that. You gotta go into the other more successful careers. So they did allow me to do art, but they all did agree that they want me to go into a better art school. So that's why they took me over to America. That is half of the reasons why I came to America around 7 years ago, so I can start an education in art. The other reason is a very funny story. My current stepdad, he was one of the Southern soldiers in Vietnam who ran over to America 50 years ago. So that was fun. Yeah. When he's been in America for like over 50 about 50 years by this point. Yep.
Yeah.
And he started to meet my mom online, and then they fell in love and they married each other. Around that time too, his eyesight started to fail. So we decided that after he marries my mom, we are going to move to America, so that we can take care of him. So yeah, now I am in America, finished my educations in art, very happy that I did, and taking care of my current stepdad with his sight is still worsening, and well, the health system in America is not really helping, I'm gonna say.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, like really not at all. If I get the chance to like choose, like with all the knowledge I know, I think that I definitely would not have chosen to come to America.
Hmm.
I have a very, very big family back in Vietnam, and lots of the times, me and my mom, we really depend on the emotional support that we get from our family for almost everything from financial support, mental supports, and a lot of other things. Every holiday so far, we have spent it alone. Like Lunar New Year, we spend it alone. We don't get to celebrate it with our family like we used to. Or even the we celebrate the unifications of the countries. I that's a fun topic to talk about later. But for now,
Yes.
for my family, it was a celebrations, a very big day for us. But we weren't able to celebrate it either, and it really takes a mental toll on both me and my mother. And yeah, I do not appreciate most of like the xenophobia that I have faced in then as well. So if I had a chance to choose, I would have stayed in Vietnam with my entire family.
I definitely want to talk to you about the xenophobia thing because that's something that I was hoping to cover this year, actually.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah. The story of you and your stepfather and your mom, like that is, it's on one hand a wonderful story, but also a very tragic story. Yeah, but it does
Yeah.
break my heart a little bit that you are feeling alone in this country, so to speak.
It really does.
Yeah.
Like it's just like everybody feels so distant here compared to like back in Vietnam. Like when you were in Vietnam and you were going vacation, you notice like most doors were open.
Yeah.
Rarely are there any doors closed. I love that. You
Yeah.
walk by, you say hi to your neighbor, you get in, drink some tea, and here every door is shut. I know why, but that breaks my heart a little. But yeah.
I could just sit outside and watch a soccer game, and even though I was like not Vietnamese,
Really.
people will
Karaoke every day, every night.
It was very nice. It was a community, and there's a better social fabric there. You can saw it during COVID because people were able to sort of work together in Vietnam to like, compared to here, people were like, ridiculous.
Yeah, COVID was especially hard time too because both me and my mom got the COVID at the same time, and we did not have anybody take care of us, especially not our stepfather who could not take care of us because he's blind.
Right.
So we just had to lock ourselves away, barely any food to eat during that time because we couldn't go out and get groceries all by ourselves, and all that time we just wished that we had the support of our family members back then.
I mean, that entire topic I could actually like go on for probably an hour in itself regarding both the community-based focus of Asian cultures versus the increasingly individual focus mindset of Westerners, and the degradation of like the nuclear family idea where, if you go back to like, for instance, even though it wasn't a great time, like the 60s and going to the 70s, doors being unlocked or open and more community gatherings inside the US were a lot more popular, whereas we've continued to disconnect inside the West. I've just seen that people have become more closed off and more self-involved versus where if you look at a lot of the responses for COVID inside Eastern countries, Korea, for example, did a great job handling COVID, and the cases that they did have, they were able to quarantine properly. I want to say that going back, I want to say it was Taiwan who had developed an app that actually helped track the spread of COVID by people self-reporting and making it public knowledge, so that way it would go off of phone pings where it could tell you if you were potentially exposed to that person, so that you yourself could also self-quarantine. Not to mention the outcropping of support from smaller countries like Taiwan to help with things like testing kits, masks, shields, things like that to spread to other countries to help them be able to also be handle that outbreak.
Yeah, it's funny.
Also, I'm sorry, I'm very loud.
You're just naturally loud. It's funny you should mention like the social fabric, because it reminds me that children aren't able to play outside, so to speak, anymore and such, which is why I kind of want to like turn it over to the parents of this panel, Manda, to sort of tell us a bit about their story.
we hear
Can't
Manta?
hear you, Manta.
Sorry, I was muted.
Oh.
My story starts with my father, who moved to America with his parents around the time he was 12. So this is like late 70s or so.
Mhm.
Palau has been basically occupied by like one place or another for like the last 500 years, and at the time was still considered a U.S. territory. And so anybody from the Pacific Islands could technically like travel to the U.S. and not need like a visa or anything like that. So they basically, the states were always just as a way to try to get a chance at a higher education and a better just chance at work and everything like that. So that was their main motivator coming in. And a lot of my dad and his generation, like his brothers and sisters, kind of got into like military service as like a fallback. And so I come from like a big military family. I did not follow in those tracks, but that is where like a big part of that like fell into. So a lot of my family is U.S. veterans, and I'm actually trying to. My grandparents moved back to Palau since, and so to answer the would they move back right now in these times, I don't know that that'd be the case considering the economy as it is, and also like the political tensions that are right now.
Right.
Especially like considering their age, they want to be back to where they lived, and I think that's where they're going to spend the rest of their life. My dad's over there too, actually, and I'm going to try to see if I can't get a trip going like next year to see them, and that will be like a cool way to get my kid to kind of like see their heritage and their culture and see where everybody comes from. That'll be their first time seeing Palau or anything like that, and that'll be my second time being there in my entire life.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I haven't been since I was 10.
10. Wow.
I was a kid too, yeah. So I was basically my kid's age, and so it's like, okay, I definitely got to make this happen.
So your kid's about 10, if you don't mind us asking.
Yeah, they're 9. They turn 10 later this year.
Got it.
So
Yeah,
it'll be a good parallel.
absolutely. That's the other sort of like facet of this. Like when we talked about like the legacy of like Asians coming to America, there's like a couple of big like sort of pillars. There's like work and the economy, there's the military, and then there's war. Those are kind of the three big ones basically. And like it's intrinsically linked. Pacific Islanders, it's the military and it's the economy. For like Southeast Asians, it's the war for the most part. For everybody else, it's the economy. But it's as like you see with AWU, like it has changed because now you can come here for an education. You can come here for other reasons that isn't traumatic, and I think that is kind of nice, honestly. Even though the circumstances of American society has changed a little bit. That kind of brings me into a next question I want to ask about being Asian in America, essentially. So, the question is, we here on this panel present as quote-unquote Asian in different and sometimes unconventional ways. Looks at the incredibly tall men to the right of me. Even so, do you feel that you carry the so-called racial uniform of being Asian, or do you think that people perceive you more as American? Why do you feel this way?
Oh, I got this for sure. Asian people see me as an American, and Americans see me as Asian.
Really?
Yes, I got that exact same thing.
Hands down.
Yeah,
And everyone just sees me as Polynesian.
If you go into like where I'm currently at, I have a very large Asian like community around me, so it's a little bit different than back when I was actually a child. When I was more of a kid, I was in an area where I was one of the 2 Asians in the entire school.
Wow.
I remember we had to, at one point, they wanted to teach people how to use chopsticks. So automatically they were like, hey, you're the Asian kid. You can use chopsticks. Teach everyone how to use chopsticks. I'm like, okay.
This is your duty. You must fulfill it.
Exactly.
What you came to America for, specifically for this.
Exactly. It's my time. I will show you all how to use these 2 sticks.
That
Yeah,
does
I
remind
mean-
me of a time in school where we had one of those little like just like kid fairs that we were doing, and you can like win like little tickets and like turn them in at the like little like fun like prize thing. And they had one of the games where it's like whoever could do like use chopsticks to put popcorn in like the other bowl the most wins. And people were just giving me looks as I had like the entire bowl done in the time that they gave us while everyone else was struggling.
Teacher, they're cheating.
They're cheating. They're Asian.
They already know how to do this.
Wait,
It's like I do this every day.
So can I eat it too while I'm at it?
I had a similar story where in high school, my Japanese teacher looked at me my freshman year when she was trying to teach the exact same thing, and she was horrible at using chopsticks. And she's like, "Cootie, why don't you show everybody, how to use chopsticks?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Let me show you the baby way." So like, I went around with I was like, "I need rubber bands and I need paper." So like, I made the little like rig that a lot of Asian cultures use to like teach their kids how to do it. And I was just like, all right, not sure why I got chosen for this, especially since you're the teacher and you have an Asian husband and you supposedly also use chopsticks at home. All right, I'll do it.
It's more authentic coming from you.
Yeah.
The thing coming with that though is I never properly learned to use chopsticks, so I cross my chopsticks.
Oh, I've seen people doing that too. So you just use it kind of like a clamp.
Yep,
That's,
I
that's
use
how
mine.
that's how I do it. That's how I do
Yeah,
it.
but like the formal way of using it. I learned later on the more formal way where you like keep them apart from each other. I still cross mine when I eat.
We listen and we don't judge.
Exactly. I just whenever it gets the
chopsticks, you
food
use
in my
chopsticks.
mouth.
Yes.
To be fully
Good enough for
honest,
Crown, good
Palauans
enough
like
for me.
only use chopsticks because of like the Japanese occupation.
I was gonna ask
We
you
totally
that
eat with our
actually.
hands.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. The Japanese only occupied us for like a couple decades, if that. That was mostly just during the World Wars, but like there's a state in Palau, I forgot which one exactly. I'll have to look it up. But there's a state in Palau that actually like has its official language. One of its official languages Japanese. And like Japan doesn't even have its official language as Japanese. And so it's like these guys are like simping hardcore and I have no clue why. It's like I get it. It's in my blood too. I think that's also just a consequence. But I don't know. I never made that link. I never figured out why like they're so like hardcore for it. Like my own grandma, like she's Palauan and she speaks Japanese.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Reminds
And
me of a very
my
odd
grandpa
thing.
is the reason I'm Japanese and he speaks less Japanese than she does.
Hey, it works.
It works. It works.
Kind of brings up an interesting topic in itself regarding Japanese imperialization and its conquest to expand outwards. Because like for instance, I am some people might know this ethnicity, but I'm actually part Amishi, and along with my Korean side, so I'm just doubly oppressed by the Japanese because they definitely didn't invade Korea like 17 times. They stole my ancestors' land on both sides.
They're thorough as hell.
Oh,
I found out something like late in my grandma's life that it reminds me of this, which is really weird. She was able to say about 3 Japanese phrases. I don't know where she learned it from, and it wasn't normal Japanese. It sounded almost imperial. Like she would say like what? She would be like wakutashi. I'm like, Grandma, why do you speak like that? But like, and I'm just like, but she never explained it to me.
Was this the
I
one
tried-
that works with the French?
Yes.
I mean, Vietnam was like occupied by the Japanese for like a couple of years, I think.
Yeah, but she never explained why she learned. Like,
Why she doesn't
They're-
like honorific Japanese?
yeah, it's like I have several like mysteries about that side of the family, my mom's side, where it never got solved, and the two people who would know both passed away. So I am forever going to be unable to know why my grandmother randomly knew some Japanese. Or like she never actually mentioned anything about my mother's father. Don't know who my grandfather is to this day.
Mysterious.
But
yeah.
apparently we're full Viet, so that's all I know.
So I think the root of this question is like, when you are Asian in America, you really tend to not have the benefit of being seen as an individual. You are seen as like an Indian person of the Indian community or a Chinese person of the Chinese community. And what you do is reflective of all Chinese people or Korean people, such. I don't know if that's necessarily reflective of your guys' experiences, if you are, example, mixed race or, not conventionally looking like the conventional Asian person. I look like a typical Indian person, sort of. I dress differently. So I don't know what people think of me. And I don't have an accent. But I feel that sometimes people just assume that I am, like, not from this country. If I'm, like, in Ohio or something. In New York, no. Like, everyone, like, automatically, like, knows that I'm, like, probably not whatever. But, like, whenever I go to, like, the Midwest, I definitely get the vibe that people assume that I'm not from this country, you know?
And I mean, I feel like I have an interesting viewpoint on it just because I've lived in the Midwest, I've lived in Florida, the Carolinas, New York, in Manhattan specifically, and worked in Flushing. I've lived in SoCal. I visit NorCal fairly regularly, and I lived in both Texas and in Washington, in Seattle specifically.
Damn.
And I feel like, yeah, I like to move a lot.
You like to move it.
I do. And it's interesting to see how that gets reflected. Because like I said, like as a joke, like I'm always Polynesian. Specifically in like areas where there's a smaller Asian like population. People see 6'8" and tan and Asian kind of looking and built like a wall, and they're like, "Oh, you're Samoan, aren't you?" And I'm like, "No, I'm Korean."
I get the Samoan too. I've heard that.
Don't you love that?
Yeah, I'm like, or the Mongolian.
I also get Samoan, but at least they're on like the right side of the world when they call me that.
Yeah, at least you're actually a Pacific Islander.
Right? Like not even Polynesian, but we're getting in the same. We're getting in the ballpark.
Yeah. Like
a little warmer.
It's interesting because like as I've gone away from like areas with lower populations like that, and then you start going into like the higher populations like Chicago or New York or LA, San Francisco, Seattle, areas with much a higher density of Asians. People can typically kind of, tell, a bit more accurately, right? Especially inside the Asian community itself, who you are. And especially if they see your name, they're like, oh, yeah, no. Because I have a very Korean name. But it's interesting because I feel like as someone who lived in Korea and emigrated here, like we had said earlier, I feel like from the Asian side, it's more of a reflection of how American, like, I may come out to them versus like, I still have a lot of Korean mannerisms, but they come out more when I'm around Koreans. But for the most part, those things get suppressed just because it's not, I don't speak Korean daily anymore. But when you are inside of an area like the Midwest, for example, and it's the Midwest does have some high concentrations like Chicago and other cities that do have larger Asian populations, but you're still kind of looked at at least in my experience, more for the Asian side than you are the American side. So it's kind of like you're almost an outsider to both sides in my experience.
Straight up.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely what I go through.
Most people actually can't figure out what I am. I do it as a little game. I usually like to ask people, "What do you think I am?" when they ask me, "Where am I from?" It's about a 10% hit rate, approximately.
Yeah.
That's
In
that's
terms.
giving. yeah. It's I'd say giving people extra, rounding up. About 10% people get it right by the 5th time.
My favorite one is to like, because if you're racially ambiguous to people that are racist, they don't know what slur to call you. And because I'm 6'8", I kind of like egging them on a little bit and be like, that's the wrong one.
I like doing that.
And then
I
just
wanna
see
have
if
that
they
power.
can kind of hit the right one. And they almost never do.
It's always fun. It's always fun because it's like, I was like, no, wrong one. Should try again.
And a miss. All right, let's go again, boss. Come on, you got this.
Yeah.
One more chance at this.
Yeah,
Kime
like-
asks, do Indian Americans get recognized as Asian American spaces? If not, why not? Typically, I mean, the Census Bureau recognizes Indians as Asian Americans, but I don't think the average American recognizes Indians as Asians. I think East Asians are synonymous with Asian in the American mind. Indians are Indians. The term Asian American, as we mentioned in the previous episode, came about in the 60s as student activists in wanting to have solidarity with the civil rights movement coined the term to sort of like bring all of the people who were sort of organizing together under one sort of umbrella: Indian Americans, Chinese Americans, Korean Americans, Filipino Americans, into one cohesive political force. And today it is still convenient and politically convenient to have the AAPI caucus, for example, in Congress. But no, typically Indians don't get recognized as Asians in most American spaces. Thank you for the
You got to
question.
remind people sometimes.
Yeah.
There is a spectrum of skin tones inside of Asia,
Yeah.
and cultures and religions. But it's a very diverse area. It's a very large, massive land.
And borders don't really like do it justice, because you can go into like India itself and you will find people who look very East Asian, like in the north and the east. So
Mm-hmm.
Rana says, have you guys ever ran into a person or were in a scenario where someone was surprised with your English, were expecting an accent, whether light or heavy? For example, your English is so good.
Oh, like all the time. Like almost like 70% of new people I meet, they always say that whenever I start speaking English fluently in front of them.
How do you feel
Like,
about
oh
that?
my god. Like for like I'm like 50% proud, 50% offended. Because like, oh my god, yay, my English is so good. I got like good accent. That means that my education was really good. So that I can speak this way. But also at the same time, how heavy did you expect my accent to be? Was there a specific way you want me to be speaking to you? Some more exotic way, like, hello, how are you? It's the like I use that because that's usually the way that my mother is the one that's like speaking to them. I think that's what they're thinking of. So like, I don't know. They probably don't mean bad when they make that expressions. But also, but at the same time, oh my god, Bunny Bee, that's my friend.
Hey, buddy.
But also at the same time, by this point, you should. I feel like by this point, with your proper educations in the media, you shouldn't like expect people to have speak a certain way.
Yeah,
I feel like it's definitely a backhanded compliment.
It's
That's
patronizing.
unintentional.
Yeah. You speak so good for your people is what I'm kind of like getting at. I have been said that like directly once. Like, oh my god, you speak English so good for your people.
Just implies
That's
that everyone else that they've spoken to is like just deficient somehow, you know?
Yeah.
I think the unfortunate thing is that a lot of people's impressions of Asians is heavily shaped by the media they consume. And what is the media perception of Vietnamese people?
Let's see. I think like the most common one is gonna be, the accent of the people who do your nails in nail
Nail
salons.
salon worker, exactly.
Yeah, such a good majority of
Yeah.
nail salons are owned by Vietnamese people, so they're really expecting that. Honey, how you want your nails today?
Exactly.
You want a pedicure? No credit card, only cash, okay?
Your
They-
nails so pretty, like model.
Oh my god, you got boyfriend? Why you no boyfriend? You're so beautiful, honey. I can go on for
Exactly.
days with that accent.
But you also got to remember, we always throw in the backhanded Vietnamese with the comments on them.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Like, I
so
think
like,
it's interesting to see. Oh, sorry, good.
yeah, but like if you take like 10 Vietnamese characters in media, probably 9 of them sound like that, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's because they're only represented like that. Like, not only, but like majorly represented like that. Like, I don't actually watch a lot of American films that feature Vietnamese people in it. The only one I could think of is that one where that one Vietnamese girl was talking about like the different kinds of relations that you can have on bed. I forgot which movie that was. But she was, yeah, but like she has like a very, very thick Vietnamese accent.
Mm.
That's like the only Vietnamese representations in medias that I currently know about. But like,
Mhm.
if like the most major ones are represented like that, then the majority of people are gonna expect that whenever they
Right.
come to speak to you.
Then everyone's be like, "Oh wow, you speak good," because every other like Vietnamese person I've seen in my limited time speaks like, a nail salon worker.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, there's like how many Vietnamese people in the U.S.? Like what, 1 million, I think.
So how often have you spoken to Vietnamese people? How often have you like heard a Vietnamese person speak? I can't
Exactly.
answer. Ooh, hydration.
I think it's kind of interesting to see how certain like accent stereotypes have evolved
Hmm.
over time as well, based off of media. Because like now, like for instance, you have your auntie Korean, right? You have your ajusi Korean, and then now you have like your Hongdae guy Korean, and it's like,
I haven't seen those TikTok. Home Date
yeah,
guy.
excuse me,
You were into the
are you open mando? You know,
I love it.
like it's wild. Like just kind of seeing like, it's I do feel like, in some ways it's gotten better, but in other ways it's just kind of morphed into something completely different, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know. Like I've always kind of found the whole like, you speak English really well for, insert ethnicity here. Like I had one where I was in Korea and I was outside the airport and I was waiting for a bus, and the guy's like, and this is Americans. This is towards you. I don't know why, but Americans love talking with an accent really slow and loud and thinking that helps.
Oh god,
Yes.
Oh my god.
Like
people who like know
It-
Japanese do this all the time. They speak to Japanese people in a Japanese accent, and it's the most obnoxious thing.
Konnichiwa.
I mean, in a way, sometimes it can help depending on the word, because you know what, katakana is kind of that, right? Like it's
Sure.
using a lot of their sounds to like make borrowed words. But at the same time, not every Asian country does that, and it's a little what's the word I'm looking for?
American centric.
Yeah, because like the guy looks at me and goes like, "Excuse me, is this where you take the bussy downtowny?" With like hand gestures and everything, and I'm
Oh
like,
yeah, we have to put in the hand gestures as well.
"Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I'm waiting for the bus just like you." And he's like, "Oh, you speak English? You speak English so well." And I'm like, Yeah, I'm visiting, dude.
It's like, brother, you're at the airport. Like, chances are they probably speak English too. Like, if you're out, like, I'll give you that if you're like out in the countryside somewhere, you just rock up to like a bus stop in the middle of a rice field, and then the person breaks out like solid English. You're allowed to be surprised then. Then you could be like, oh, damn, you speak English. Wow.
But dude, you're at the airport.
I'm gonna. Do you have a question you want to ask, Goody?
Oh yeah, sure. I actually had one kind of related to what we were talking about, and that's, when, as some of you have gone through like schooling inside the U.S. and, we've all been through different levels of schooling, and started at different points, right? Did you have any conflicts when it comes to something like worldview or your culture with your teachers or classmates at the time? Like, I could give an example where I think it was in 3rd grade. We had to do journals, and it was to practice our cursive, and we were supposed to like write about certain things. And it's like, oh, why are you proud to be be an American? And I was like, okay, well, when I grew up, we still had military curfews, right? So you couldn't be outside past certain times during certain, events. And it was still a highly controlled environment. And seeing like the amount of freedoms that I have here inside the United States, it makes me a lot more proud to be here, where I feel like we're given liberties that weren't available to me there. And my teacher literally went, "What are you talking about?" and gave me a failing grade on it.
Oof.
Wow, that's not a good teacher.
No. But I was just kind of like, okay. This is a real thing, but all right. Go you, I guess. But
Go
like,
you.
did you have any... but did you have any experiences like that where like just your background or your culture, your worldview, like just kind of had a big conflict with, people that you had gone to school with in that way?
I back in Vietnam, I had very strict educations. So, like, how like math in certain countries is like a lot harder. That's when I came to America. I was pleasantly surprised at like the level of educations that I feel like I've surpassed some of my peers at. I feel like I was like. I feel a little bit mean, but there's like also the stereotypes of like Asians sometimes are like really good at math. That was me. I was like, is this middle school math? I did so much better than this. Are you guys sure about this? And I was even more surprised is the liberty that you can take whenever you're writing essay, because for writing essays or any kind of like reports in Vietnam, there's always a strict guideline that you have to follow. The format of the wordings might be a little bit different, but essentially everybody should produce the same exact conclusion whenever you read any book, whenever you read about any poems or you're talking about any songs. You should always reach the same conclusion. But that wasn't the case here. Like, I was pleasantly surprised that American education allowed you to have a lot more liberty with your thinking and like speaks your mind. I was also lucky enough when I first came to America. In Chicago, I went to a school that had a majority of the school populations as students from other countries that isn't just Caucasian Americans. So they were a lot more lenient with like understanding the differences in our culture. So luckily, we never had the situations where like, what are you talking about? I never experienced this by a teacher, and like this, I don't know. I don't know. I should put this in the grade book. Like, you should rewrite it, or I'm gonna give you an F because your experience isn't shared by the many. They were very nice about different experience shared by the students. So a lot of very pleasant surprises there. In terms of the American education, the only thing I wasn't pleasantly surprised with, oh my god, the food in America. The food in school cafeterias in America. How do you guys survive all of that? The pizza, and then the like the frozen chicken nugget, the the everything is just so terrible here. I feel so bad, so I start bringing my own lunch. But other than that, everything was pretty good. Yay, school in America, yay.
You know, it's kind of funny you mentioned like the expectation of the level of education, because like myself, for example, when I came to the US, like I already knew like how to count past 100. Like when I was like doing like the entry exams for like, you know, going into grade school, like I already count well past 100. I could do 3-digit addition and subtraction. I was actually into multiplication at that point. And then I don't think we hit that until what, like 3rd or 4th grade, and this is me at a preschool level, and it's like it's interesting to kind of see that difference in standards.
Yeah, like it does make me feel like, oh man, I have more time to live as a kid now, because like they're the level not the level of educations. I guess that's like a poor choice of wordings, but just like the level progress a little bit slower compared to in Asian countries where yours like they want you to be at the best very, very fast. Like when I go into chemistry in high school, I was immediately booted to AP chemistry, my first year when I was in America.
That's great. That's crazy.
And I got like the second I came to the class, they were having an exam. They're like, "Oh, we're so sorry that you had to come in like during an exam day like this for your first day, but like you just do whatever you can do, okay?" And then I was the only one who got an A in that class that day. That did make me feel like a god for a little bit of time. I felt like a god, and then I failed AP chemistry. But
okay, you made the best entry possible.
You made the best entry, yes.
Yeah, like I came in burning, and then I burned out at the end.
Yeah, like lithium. You just burned out really fast. That's how lithium works, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
I didn't do well in chemistry either. I wasn't that type of Asian.
I'm not good at chemistry either.
Yeah.
Ironically.
It was just
I think I have a short story about that one, because we were talking about how I can't go into too many details and you'll understand why.
Mm-hmm.
So I was telling you I was like one of the 2 Asians back in my elementary school. So I will just throw out like they called me a specific name. And I still go by that name to this day. It's not my name.
Is it your English name?
It's my middle name.
Oh, I have. Oh,
I do the same thing. I do the same thing.
Yeah. But
it's
the thing
because
is,
I didn't know how to put my name in the papers when I first came to America. Now the name is always wrong. Yeah.
well, no, the reason was it's even worse.
Oh.
I didn't know it was my middle name.
Oh.
Until the 2nd grade.
Interesting.
Everybody used it. My teachers, even my parents go used to using it, right? And in the 2nd grade, my aunt one day, she's like, "Hey boy, what's your name?" I'm like, "Blah blah blah, this is my name." She's like, "Wrong." I'm like, "Oh shit, auntie said wrong." She was just more like mother than anything. So when I heard that, I was like, "Oh crap, what I do? What I wrong?" I believe instantly, and she corrected me. That's when I found out what my first name was. My first name is a Vietnamese name. I had thought it was an American name this entire up until the 2nd grade, because I assume my teachers couldn't say my name, and they couldn't figure out what to use instead. So they went for the next easiest thing, which was my middle name.
I mean, it's kind of related to Atra in a way, but like, so American names is something that I've realized is very common among a lot of Asian cultures, just because a lot of Americans have issues pronouncing our names, right?
Right.
A good example of this is that I used to work forever ago at Time Warner before they got enveloped in Charter and a whole bunch of other stuff.
That's the best.
Yeah.
So, funny story. all of the Korean-speaking, male-presenting agents, all of us just called ourselves John because it's very similar to a lot of different names. So if you've talked to a Korean agent named John, could have totally have been me at one point.
Yeah, I was like the John Kim. John Kim. John? John?
John.
Is it John?
It's
John.
like, oh, I spoke to John, and we're just like, okay, we got to go in the notes. I don't know who they spoke to. Was it me? Was it this person? Was it that person?
Ma'am, there are 5 John Kims here.
You might as well have said John Smith at this point. Like,
That happens.
Jennifer Lee.
That actually happens at work all the time. They're like, "Yeah, my doctor wrote this." Which doctor? Oh, contact my doctor, Dr. Kim. Which Dr. Kim?
SMH.
Can't believe my chiropractor was your doctor.
I cannot begin to tell you the amount of times I have to like correct people at work when they say Dr. Nguyen wrong.
Nguyen. Oh,
Nguyen.
different.
Nguyen.
Funniest thing, the worst way I've ever heard that one said was my buddy came back from like boot camp, and he's like, you won't believe this. I'm like, what? This is how they said my name. New engine.
New engine.
New engine. I was like,
New engine. I just really wish that they responded with like motor noises at that point. Like
that would have been beautiful.
New engine.
There's a question from Marshmallow. What's a huge culture shock with moving to America that you didn't have to deal with back home? I guess it's to be more specific to Cootie and Susie.
I think I like briefly talk about it is how like closed off everybody is compared to back in my country. I think I've lived at my current address for around 5 years now. I still do not know who the hell my neighbor is. I do not know what they look like. I do not know their name, how many people are in their families or whatnot. If I was back in my country, I would have been invited to like eat at their house like once a month by this point. I would know their entire family history. I would have been best friend with their pet. I would know even to like their the homeowner mother-in-law maybe. It's like everybody's just so close off here, and like you said, like it's like it's the singular mindset compared to like the community mindset that a lot of Americans have. So it was a very quiet first few months in America. Nothing to do, nobody to talk to. I did got used to it soon enough. I have now become a filthy introvert who spends most of her day indoors. 2 weeks now. Haven't left my house yet. Touching grass. Poo.
Good thing you go to a con then, huh?
Yeah. Oh my god. Thank God I'm going to a con soon next week. I get to meet.
God, I feel that way too close.
I actually want to ask this question, and it touches on a bit what Anta was mentioning earlier about going back to Palau at some point. But it's related to going to Asia, basically, and how easy it's become to go to Asia. Is actually, let me ask the question. For early Asian immigrants, for a variety of reasons, being able to return to Asia was a pipe dream. Maybe once or twice in a lifetime, if ever. The trip to the US was one way for many. In the modern era, it's possible to travel back to and forth at will. Have you been back? Has the ease to which you were able to transit between the US and the homeland of your parents shaped your identity in any way?
I mean, I could probably segue the first question into the second question if you're fine with that.
Go for it.
So the biggest shock I had, like, kind of going back between the two. So a little bit of a story, but so when I was about 4 years old, apparently I was really interested in the ladies as well, because I was a little skirt chaser at like 3 and 4.
Same best.
So what happened was I was following a girl across a road on the top of a hill, which was a fairly steep hill, and a guy driving a light truck did not see me in the road.
Oh no.
Hit me. I flew like 15 feet. And they picked me up. They put me in the back of the truck and immediately drove me to the nearest hospital. By talking, they were able to kind of weave the information back to my mother through different people. So she knew where I was and came as soon as she could. But like I said, I was a fairly respectful kid. So a lot of the older generation knew me very well. And yeah, I had really old Korean aunties and grandmas that would come by and check on me. And coming to the US, it's kind of interesting because I have an instance where the older generation was the actual generation that took care of me after an accident here in the US, but then the younger generation's the one that ran. So,
oh no.
One time I was riding a bike inside my apartment complex when I was a kid, and I was zooming, and Americans love their really long cars, and I misjudged how far this Cadillac was pushed into the sidewalk. And like a cartoon, I hit the car, and I not only hit the car, I like triple front flipped into like a headstand to the concrete off of the bike.
Oh my.
And these two very, you think grandma, and that's exactly who you think of, like old white, like grandma with like the cardigan and the brooch, right? And they came outside and saw me, and they noticed that it was their car I hit, and instead of being like, my car, they were like, holy crap, knocked out kid on the floor. And now it's kind of scary thinking about it, but they picked me up, brought me inside, like fanned me off, tried to get me back awake, and then proceeded to give me, food and snacks and water, and tried to bring me back. And, I was super thankful for it, obviously. They were super sweet, and I knew them for a long time before we moved out of that complex. But on the flip side, one time I was a kid, because, I loved being in danger, apparently. And
I think I know why you back issues, by the way.
Yeah, it might be all the times I've been hit by things.
Yes.
I ended up going up a hill, and it was like a sheer cliff face on the side of this hill, and I ended up falling, and then the other kids that were a little bit older, instead of going to find our parents that were close by, were like, he got hurt, and then I had to limp my way back to then get reprimanded for getting my clothes dirty because they were new clothes.
That's the main concern.
Yeah. But sorry, I went off on so much of a tangent. Could you refresh me on the second part of the question?
Sure, absolutely. Basically, have you been back? Has the ease to which you've been able to transit between the U.S. and the homeland of your parents shaped your identity in any way?
Yeah. So I went back to. Oh, sorry.
Go.
So I've been back to Korea once, which was a really interesting experience, because you see, when you become a U.S. citizen, you're supposed to renounce your citizenship to the previous country you were in, unless you apply for dual citizenship.
Yeah.
FBI agent watching, you don't know this. You don't know who I am. But I basically have an illegal dual citizenship where I never renounced my
His name
Korean
is John
citizenship.
Kim. John Kim.
But yeah, I basically had an illegal dual citizenship. I was a primary citizen of both America and Korea because my mom never filled out the paperwork. So when I went back to Korea, you see, there's this mandatory military service I was supposed to do.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Oh no!
I was just thinking about that. I'm like, oh
I
no.
didn't realize.
Yeah. So it was great visiting back because obviously it's become a lot more progressive and a lot more understanding and accepting. And then they were like, hey, so your military service. And I was like, dude, I have a whole life in the US and I have parents I take care of because they're sick. I legitimately can't do this right now. And they're like, well, it's weird you have a US passport because you should have a Korean passport. And I was like, wait, what? And then that's when I found all that out. And then they were like, obviously we're going to let you go. You're not intentionally evading. So they let me go. And no, I mean, it was interesting to see the difference in dynamic from when I was a kid to what it was now. Because one, totally wouldn't have let me go if I was a kid. Like that would they would have stuck me inside whatever unit they wanted to. And I'm not exactly the sneakiest dude, being my size. So I'm just gonna be a giant bullet shield at this point. So
Just the meat shield. Oh, damn.
it's just the biggest meat shield. Like, damn, if it was, a couple centuries ago, I'd be great. Like, 6'8", giant wall of a man that, lifts a ton. I'd be great in battle.
No, you'd be the hill they
There are
shoot at.
projectiles now. Yeah, right. Like, it would actually be like the Korean David and Goliath, right? Like I mentioned this joke earlier in our chat, but it's like, my friends have this like, Korean super soldier, like sleeper agent joke that they always said about me because, 6'8" Korean, it kind of stands out.
Just waiting for the right word right now.
So yeah, it's just really interesting to see the dynamic changes, and like going back to the motherland really helped me reconnect with my Korean roots, just because I'm actually from a fairly old family inside of Korea. We'll kind of go over some of the topics later regarding servitude, but like we were a higher standing family, and it's just kind of interesting to see like how a lot of those dynamics have changed, and for the most part, the better, and seeing the industry change that we see, and being able to like really reconnect with your culture and then be proud of that, and then now we have this huge Asian wave phenomenon here in the US where everyone's like, oh, it's so cool to be Asian. And that's a talk for later, right?
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Episode 5, people.
But, yeah. Make sure you tune in. I'll definitely be there to, to cause a ruckus. Chat. But it's just interesting to see how, a lot of our cultures have evolved to be a lot more palatable in American eyes, but like we've kind of stayed off in our own vacuum and kind of come to our own conclusions with that, with obviously a little bit of influence. Lord knows a lot of us have a very close relationship with spam for that reason. It was great to kind of go back and retouch, and I feel like it did kind of reshape my view on a lot of things.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Would be interested. Yeah, go ahead, Jimmy. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I may have been born here, but my family has brought me back a few times. I don't really mention this very often, but that's how I met my ex-wife.
Oh.
Yeah, so when I was over in Vietnam, they would call me, they would refer to me as like you.
Oh, yeah,
So they
thank
would-
you.
Yeah, so because you can tell with my accent usually, and I do have an accent, so they can tell. Plus, 6-foot Vietnamese guy, they would know. They would know if I was local. So I remember it's been a long time since I've been there, but things were interesting. It was very different than what I was used to here, and I can only go off of what little I was told between my parents because they're like, "Oh, hey, things are a little bit different. This is that." But I went back maybe like 4 times, and I watched it kind of. I'm sure things are much different now, as
Yeah.
Susan can say. That's I've seen bits and pieces of it. I kind of don't want to go back because I don't really want to deal with my dad's family or my ex-wife's family. But
Understandable.
That's fair.
When's the last
Vietnam's
time you were
big.
over
You can
there?
probably go to another city.
Ooh, it's been, let's see, 16 years.
Oh wow.
Oh wow, yeah.
Hey.
Okay, yeah, a lot of things have changed.
Yeah,
that's,
I don't-
that's an entire generation.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
Arpama is from there, so I got a little bit of information from there, and
We got metro train now.
oh,
Yeah,
nice.
I know, it's really cool.
Well, I've been watching kind of just our peeps pop up everywhere and the little things, and it makes me happy. As somebody who was born on this side, I'm probably not as anti Vietnam, like the way things are now, like communists and whatnot, as most are though.
Yeah, I definitely want to
like-
touch on that at some point, like the anti-communist and like the conservatism in like some of the older folks.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know
Yeah.
Manta touched on this a little bit, but if you want to maybe elaborate a little more about sort of how you felt the first time you sort of saw Palau and how you sort of like were able to sort of connect with your roots a little bit.
Oh yeah, totally. So yeah, my dad took my sister and I, my sister being 6 years younger than me, so she was like a toddler practically. Summer of like 2001, I'm pretty sure. And I was there for most of the summer. I got to meet a lot of my family. I got to see a lot of the islands and hang out with like a lot of the neighbor kids who were also like pretty much all my cousins. It was really cool. It was the first time I got to eat like star apples off the tree or like coconuts right off the tree. And just got to see like a very different like mode of society compared to what I grew up in, because I was born in the States too. I was born and raised in Arizona, and so going from like literal like desert to tropical island, and growing up it was kind of hard to like know exactly what about my family's like norms and stuff were Palauan and what wasn't, because I had no like, you know, like I kind of had like something of a contrast because my mom's side of the family is white and my dad's side of the family is the Palauan Japanese side. But besides like the very obvious like Asian stereotypes, there wasn't much like too much difference. So I was just like, what about this is like Palauan exactly? And another weird like odd consequence of like, I don't know how this happened or if it was just like a weird like coincidence, but basically my dad and his brother never bothered to learn how to fluently speak Palauan, but for some reason all of my aunts did. And so I also didn't like grow up with that kind of like connection. Like every time like my aunts and like my grandma and everybody would be speaking Palau, and I would have no idea what they were saying. And so going to Palau and actually seeing that was like the first like tangible experience of like being like, oh shit, like I actually am Palau, and like this is like very real, you know?
I see.
And like they really like they took me through like the whole thing. Like they took me around Koror, which was like basically like the only part of Palau that you could maybe consider a city, and like had like there's like some fun restaurants there. There was even like this really nice hotel, which is like one of like the biggest hotels in the world apparently, that like they like kind of like showed me around. I got to go around the rock islands and I went snorkeling and stuff. That was super fun. And they even took me down to a south island called Pililiu, and there my grandpa showed me places where he grew up like as a kid and where he would like hang around. And I got to see old rusted like World War II tanks, I got
Interesting.
to see Orange Beach, which it has a graveyard as the entrance to the beach of like World War II soldiers. And I don't know if this is like just like a myth or like there's like any truth to this, but it is called Orange Beach because the sand is orange, and the story goes that the sand is like a rust-colored orange because that is like the blood of soldiers that have stained the sand.
Oh.
So
So that was like a little bit of a darker look, but yeah.
yeah. So sort of growing up in Arizona and like being able to go to Palau for the first time, were you sort of able to place your sense of self into like an actual framework for the first time being in Palau?
Yeah, absolutely. Like again, like it wasn't as like integral to who I was up until then. Like it was like always like I always knew I was like Palauan, and my dad would always tell me stories about it, and it really wouldn't go too much beyond that because Palau is so small and unheard of. Like it's not like I would ever see it even mentioned in media, and like anytime I try to talk about it with anybody else outside my family, they'd be like, "What is that? Like I don't. What part of China is that? I don't get it."
Or have a Palauan
And so-
community in Arizona, for example.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like that. There's like less than maybe 10,000, 15,000 like people with Palauan blood, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's not like there's like a Palauan community center or anything. It's like basically literally if I even meet anyone from like Guam or anything, I'm like, holy shit, we're basically family. Like this is so cool. But yeah, no, going actually being able to go to the island and actually being able to like just like tangibly experience just like that life and like get to meet like so much of that side of my family and learn so much more about them was like certainly life changing. And that's why it's like definitely become like one of my life goals to do that same thing for my child, because that was such a big like pivot point, I guess you could say, for like some of my development and like my identity.
Absolutely. I've always been fascinated by this concept because I know like especially these days now that like Asia's become a lot more prosperous and a lot of people sort of kind of want their kids to sort of have that culture. There's a lot of like little programs. Like I know like Taiwanese kids had like I don't know what the program's called, but it was sort of called among them like the Love Boat. If you guys have heard of this, where they'd go back in the summertime and they'd all hook up. Basically, the whole point was like the whole point was like get them to see Taiwan and like Taiwanese culture, but they'd all hook up basically. But the point was like go see Taiwan, love the culture, learn to love Taiwan, blah blah blah. And like it's something that I think that you're gonna see a lot more of among like Asian Americans, that like in that it's getting better in Asia, so like there's gonna be more of a desire, I think, for people to reconnect with their Asian roots and to maybe live sort of like dual lives, if to the extent people can, But moving on.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Can I mention one more cool thing that I just learned about, just because like it's a little bit on topic and also kind of like has to touches on Kudi's dual citizenship story.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm looking into passports, obviously, so I can go travel and go back to Palau. And I just recently found out that there is a law in like the Palauan constitution, basically saying that like if you can have any kind of like traceable Palauan heritage, you are a Palauan citizen, like just bar none. There's no questions asked.
Oh, that's.
And so apparently I've been a dual citizenship this entire time, or I've been a dual citizen my whole life, and so is my kid, just by way of like heritage. And I just thought that was really cool, so I can like apply for like a Palauan passport just like outright.
That's really interesting
cool.
because Italy just did the opposite. They just cut like the passports for like everybody with Italian like blood, basically. They cut it off.
Crazy.
Yeah, and like a lot of people with like third, fourth generation Italian blood are like, "Hey, what happened? Like, I thought you were gonna let us come back and stuff." But apparently, like the nationalists in Italy, like, no, you have to be Italian, yada yada.
Wild. Yeah, I don't think Palauans will ever be able to afford to like gatekeep like that. Like
Exactly.
Gatekeep your boss, no.
I'll turn it over to Cootie for the next question.
Yeah. So this kind of follows up on schooling again. So, do you feel that the current way history is taught in the U.S., which is primarily omits large parts of Asian American history, aside from maybe like, oh hey, they built like the Chinese have built the western half of the Union Pacific line, may have alienated young Asian Americans from feeling that they have less of a space in American than some other cultures. I mean, some examples of this are how like Asians were some of the earliest settlers of the Americas, from things like the migration across the Bering Land Bridge. And those people were eventually called by Columbus Una Gente Indios, which means a people in God. Because at the time in 1492, the region known today as India, it was known as Hindustan, or the escaped Filipino indentured servants known as the Manila Men, who set up around 8 villages on the bayous of Louisiana, who eventually fought next to Andrew Jackson in the War of 1812s during the Battle of New Orleans.
Yeah,
Damn, I didn't know they were chill like that.
Yeah, there's been a systematic erasure of Asian American communities through much of this country's history. They did it to the Japanese Americans during internment, in which they took all of their land, and even after the war was over, they dispersed them across the country. They did not let everyone go back to California. They sent them to Chicago and Nebraska and New York and whatever. They didn't want a Japanese American community to exist anymore. They refused to let Indian Americans own land up until well into the 30s and 40s. Hawaii, like, they had incredibly racist land laws. They didn't even allow Hawaiians to own land at certain points. Like, the entire history of this country has been erasing and diminishing the contributions of Asians, and much of the laws also involved, like, essentially eradicating the community. The gentleman's agreement with Japan, for example, prevented like women from coming over. You could only have men come over, and eventually the men would die out, and the community would disappear. Yada yada. So yeah, I think there is like this desire to like sort of wash away what used to be here, and then have the feel good story of 1965. Like, in 1965, we opened the doors to you because we were so generous and loving, and now that's like, and you were the perfect model minority Asians, and there were no Asians before that, except for the ones that built the railroad.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there's and this is another thing is like, have you ever heard of a trait called the Mongolian spot?
I have not, actually.
Not.
So the Mongolian spot was originally a genetic trait that, surprise, surprise, originated in Mongolia amongst people, where it's a bluish birthmark that that fades over time. Around 80% of Asians have the Mongolian spot for reasons. Cue Mongolians attacking, right? But this
wasn't there this one guy?
Yeah,
there's this one guy who made an empire, and it was crazy. But the thing is, 85 to 90% of Native Americans also have Mongolian spots when they're born, proving that genetic connection with, you know, the northern plains region of Asia, and that Bering Land Bridge crossing, where this country's always been a country of immigrants. Even the people that people call native are people that immigrated here, right? Just before formalized immigration was really a thing, right? So having all of that kind of swept under the rug, and there's plenty of other things that I'll bring up later about the contributions. But do you kind of feel like that kind of alienates a lot of younger Asian Americans from feeling like we belong here?
I think there's lots to unpack there.
They just don't teach it in schools. Like, they sure did teach it when I was in schools. They taught Black history, and they taught Cesar Chavez, and that was the entire curriculum.
Oh wait, no. What about the Alamo?
And the Alamo, which was apparently a feel-good story about I don't know what. Like, we were stealing Mexico's land that time, so
they were being patriots. Thank you. I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
We were stealing Mexico's land.
One guy had a big knife.
One of the hardest parts.
He wore like a raccoon hat. He's a hero.
Yeah.
Leave him alone.
I'm not the typical student. I abused my ability of being somewhat intelligent to sleep in class. Still pass.
Me too, bestie. Me too.
Me too.
I had one time where the teacher literally almost like I took it as a challenge. He's like, "No one's ever not done homework in my class and passed." I got a 57.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
I almost got it. Yeah, but I was like, yep. But no, it's history is also probably one of my weakest subjects because I can't remember things. So remembering dates is actually really hard. That's why, like earlier, when you guys are asking me like the time period, right? I'm like, I don't remember the dates and everything. I just have like a general ballpark of how things like it happened back then, this general time period. But I have no dates, But when I was in school, all I remember was the railroads.
Yeah.
I do remember that. I did hear some bits and pieces about the Vietnam War. Not much.
Yeah.
But then that's also because of the area I'm in. And we have quite a few Vietnamese. So I guess that kind of snuck its way in, or they stuck that in. I don't know. Because we have a lot of Asian.
I mean, I feel like that's something they can't sweep just because it was the first, massively available televised war for the United States.
Yeah.
Like, you did have, like, film propaganda during World War II, but the Vietnam War was really the first generally available war for Americans to consume media-wise.
Yeah.
I think
But even then, I don't feel there was much that they went over for it, because
It's like maybe half a chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think in my case, I didn't really know much of this history until I went to undergrad and took Asian studies courses. And then you learn you learn half the history in school. You learn the other half by taking Asian studies. Like, for example, I'll give the example of birthright citizenship. Why are anyone born in this country automatically a citizen? Love the words. Okay. Why is anyone born in this country automatically a citizen? Because in 1898, Wong Kim Ark filed a lawsuit. He was born in San Francisco, Chinese American, and he went back to China for a visit, came back, and when he came into the port, they're like, "You're not a citizen, you're not allowed back in the country." He sued. He's like, "No, I'm an American." And he won. And because of that, the interpretation of the 14th Amendment is anyone born in this country is a citizen. And when you are going to school, high school, or whatever it is, you know that. You know that is a constitutional fact, that if you're born in this country, you're born a citizen. You don't know why, though. You don't know that guy's name. You don't know anything about the court case. You don't learn about Wong Kim Ark. You learn about the court case in college if you take Asian studies, because they separated the names of the people, the Asian people, the Asian American history, from the actual history. You don't learn the names of the people. You just learn the concepts. You have to take the courses to learn the people's names. That's kind of the point I wanted to make.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of influences that Asian Americans have made towards major reform. One being the change of birthright citizenship in the 14th Amendment, because originally it was specifically towards people of African descent and formerly enslaved African Americans in particular.
Right.
So Asians, Hispanic, like nobody else was able to gain that citizenship that way until that change. But then you also have contributions like the Hate Crimes Prevention Act being pushed by the death of Vincent Chin, which was fueled by the oil crisis of the late 70s and early 80s, where Vincent Chin was a Chinese American who was beaten to death by white auto manufacturers because the Japanese were blamed for the decline and the eventual collapse of American auto worker jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have, like I said, that contributed towards the Hate Crimes Prevention Act, and you also had the mobilization of a lot of Asian communities through the Free Chol Su Li movement in the early 80s, where a person he was wrongfully convicted of a murder due to corruption, which then caused reforms inside of how police handled a lot of these situations, where it was a Korean man in Chinatown being accused of a murder. Unfortunately, he did end up, while he was wrongfully imprisoned, defending himself and killing a member of the Aryan Brotherhood, which then put a second murder charge on him, which he then pled down because he couldn't afford a proper defense for the second trial. But a lot of these things, which made huge sweeping changes across multiple systems, just kind of get swept under the rug.
It's interesting because you mentioning that, I do remember now from my textbooks. I'm thinking about my high school textbooks. There is a piece of Asian American history in that textbooks, and it's the LA riots. And it's the rooftop Koreans. That's in the textbook, actually. Now I'm thinking about it.
Of course, rooftop Koreans made it, of course.
And so, like, that's interesting to me because, like, it's mentioned because it's in relation to the main white-black race dynamic, basically. Like,
yeah.
It feels like Asians can only be talked about if it's in relation to that dynamic, basically.
No, I definitely agree. I feel like we're more of an accompanying like dish to the history that is the greater, whites versus African American, conflict inside the U.S. And if it's not a part of that major conflict, then you just kind of get forgotten, right?
Right, because it's the model
I think,
minority. Like, if you're not, like, why can't you be like them? Why can't you be like the Asians? But we all know the reason why the Asians looked so spectacular is because they only let in the best, so to speak, like the business owners, the highly educated and such. So obviously, if you let in like highly educated people, then they're going to self-select to be like high earners and highly educated and yada yada. Not the full story, of course, because you also had lots of refugees coming in also. But at the end of the day, like, the relative success of Asian Americans was used as a cudgel against blacks and Latinos.
Which then caused racial tensions between Asians, blacks, and Latinos.
Right. And then that gets put in the textbook. Because then you have a Korean guy with a gun on the roof protecting his business, and everyone's like, well, I guess the Asian guy's on our side.
And then you have me screaming down the hallway, race wars!
Speaking of the race wars, during the pandemic, East and Southeast Asian elders, in particular, took the brunt of racist attacks on API people. People often talk about our elders in derogatory or mocking ways. Is there, in your opinion, an empathy gap when it comes to Asians who aren't as wealthy or as assimilated in the US?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't even know if that can be an opinion.
Yeah.
Fact.
Like,
that's just what happens.
I definitely feel like people completely disassociates with someone that, actively speaks a different language and practices a different culture, and in general is kind of nothing like that person, right? Like, there's just this huge gap where, and we can kind of go into it a little bit more, where it's like, let's talk about the coverage of said, incidents. That was maybe a week on TV, and then we never heard about it again, right? Even though it was still happening for months. It's the amount of empathy that our elders got during that time was basically non-existent outside of our own communities.
Well, we also had other things that we had to worry about. I constantly, during that period of time, my boss would always be like, Yui, make sure you don't stay out too much. Don't go out into to the open. Don't let people see you too much, because not only was I Asian, but I also had a lab coat.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
Health
can
worker
imagine.
and that, so it was a double whammy. We've actually had people attacked. I remember
sorry.
that somebody was shot.
Oh,
It wasn't in my general area, but yeah, Asian healthcare workers. We were like, oh, well, you were the reason. They're like, we are trying to help you.
Yeah. I know a lot of my friends that work in the healthcare industry in New York faced very similar problems being of Asian descent and inside the hospitals.
Yeah. Fortunately, I'm a big guy, so Cootie knows this. Most people don't mess with us.
Yeah, I kind of had a Joe Swanson bring it on like whole mentality where it's like, if you really want to start shit, I'll start shit.
Yeah.
But, like, I won't start it, but I'll sure as hell finish it, right? Like,
Exactly.
my mom's a very stereotypical, like, smaller, Korean woman, and during that time, I had a lot of people just trying to start shit with her. And it got to the point where, like, I would get off of work and I would go to my mom's store when, things are starting to open up. And I would just be the scary dog privilege for my mom, right? Where, like, if anyone said anything, I just stood up and they were like, never mind, I'm leaving. And I'm like, good. Like, we don't need you here. Like,
I'll
it's,
hit you on the way out.
yeah. Yeah.
No, it's definitely not lost on me that it's the elderly that are being targeted. One of the most vulnerable demographics in society.
mm.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that kind of ties into the cowardice of the people that do these attacks, right? They don't choose someone that can really put up a fight. It's really more of who's seen as an easy target.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yep.
I do think, though, that part of this too is that there is almost in the way two types of Asians. There is the type of Asian who is like speaks English well, is educated, and is sort of like seen as kind of like adjacent to American. And then there's like the Asian who is like kind of foreign, not really like, not seen as an equal, basically. And then we're talking about basically like, elderly people, recent immigrants, people working in like the service industry. I think I'm seeing this dichotomy sort of exist now these days, in which people see certain Asians as equal to them and certain Asians as not. And I feel like COVID really exposed that, because all of a sudden people were picking on the Asians they didn't see as equal to them. I don't know if you guys see that too.
Oh, I probably should have prefaced this. My mom is also has a very thick accent, and like and is older, so like she kind of fits that, what people saw as like an easier target, because she's more easily like like the empathy gets kind of thrown out just because of just how different she is, right? Like I definitely do think that people that are less Americanized have a much harder time.
Mm.
It's another like sort of dynamic I see too. Is I don't know if this is the case in most places, but here in New York there is like a new generation of people coming in, and it's wealthier Asians from Asia actually. So they're completely different. Like they wear designer clothes, like they're renting out the very expensive apartments, and they really couldn't give a shit about like actually mixing and like sort of like Americanizing, so to speak. And
Yes.
it's very interesting because like
Crazy rich Asian.
Crazy Rich Asians, basically. It's very interesting because like they kind of have the same sort of like, they occupy the same space as like the elderly and poor Asians, basically, in which white people don't see them as Americans, but they kind of just are able to sort of separate themselves by using class as like sort of like a barrier, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, classism is what speaks the most in this country. The boundaries of racism and other like minor demographics kind of dissolve away once like you kind of look at it from that scope.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Damn, I didn't know you rich.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
was like it's like there you were saying earlier about like how like there is like a different way they see and treat poor Asians, and it's like, well, it's almost to be expected. Have you seen the way they treat like their own poor? Like
Yes,
it's across
exactly.
the board, you know.
Exactly. That's what's trying to get at. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like I feel like reaching like a higher economic status is like the prerequisite to being quote unquote accepted into that society.
Yeah.
Being recognized or acknowledged for whatever you are.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. By the way, chat, the depths, not the depths, sorry. This podcast will be about 2 to 2.5 hours long, so if you have any questions for our panelists, please get them in. Now, we will start shifting into some discussions about politics and intercommunity dynamics now, but you can ask any questions you'd like of the panel related to the topic. Before I get into the politics question, Cootie, do you have a question you would like to ask?
It kind of bounces off of your question regarding how some of the elderly were affected, but like, so, one of the topics that we talked about was just kind of how a lot of Americans see Asians as, being more loyal to their country of origin than to America, right?
40% statistic, yeah.
So, how do you feel with America's history of punching down on Asian communities while the country is in strife? Attributes to that view of Asians being more connected with their country of origin versus America. A few examples of this are things like the Japanese internment camps, like the story of Mike Shinoda's family inside the song Kenji, where they were at the Manzanar internment camp in Arizona. The Bellingham riots were Indian laborers, which were predominantly Sikh men from the Punjab region, were beaten so badly that they had to be hospitalized, and by the next day, the entire population of immigrant lumber workers fled into Canada. Or the previously mentioned killing of Vincent Chin. Or this is the fun one that a lot of people don't talk about. Abraham Lincoln's kind of blind eye to the coolie trade inside the United States, where it was basically an idea of, well, as long as it's not on an American ship, I don't see anything. Where a lot of plantation owners now had their workforce supplemented instead with East Asian workers, where they were quote unquote indentured servants versus slaves, but they were treated in the same barbaric fashion inside the Pacific slave route as they did inside the Atlantic slave route, as the British basically switched gears to the other side of the world to continue flooding functionally slaves inside the U.S. With
that's how my
basically bills. Yeah, like they basically had bills they couldn't pay off to no longer be indentured.
Yep, we were never gonna make it back to India. We could not afford the bill to go back. We were stuck in Guyana.
That just did something interesting right there. You said coolie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a word that we use in Vietnamese.
Yeah,
oh, coolie?
Mm-hmm.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's right, we do.
Yeah, it just triggered on that. I'm like, wait, and it feels similar too, because we would talk about like, it's like, oh yeah, it's like you work like coolie, like you would work like.
I guess it might be like a borrowed word from French that just kind of like spreads to any countries that was like occupied by French for a while.
Yeah, no.
I can do you one better. The slang term for my people is coolie, actually. We are coolie people.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think coolie is actually a Hindi word.
Interesting.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay,
So if you heard anyone talking about coolie people, they mean Indo-Caribbean. Like myself. But to answer the question, what haunts me about the 40% statistic is I look at the way that like American politicians on both sides, by the way, and this includes Bernie Sanders, looking at you, Bernie, the way that people talk about China as a threat, and Chinese Americans as being potentially more loyal to China than, like, the US. It's like, there is no real basis for you to have this broad assumption that people would be more loyal to a foreign country because they are Chinese. Because everybody has free will. People make individual choices to be more American or more Chinese or whatever, because everyone has their individual self-interest. So every single day, we have people, politicians in this country being like, the Chinese threat, our greatest adversary, the Chinese. And it's like, it just wears at you. Like, and like, you know, I'm not East Asian, but I'm like, just imagine hearing that day in and day out. Like, I don't really think this is a sustainable way to live with the way that we continuously hammer on, like, you know, these Asian countries.
Senator, I'm Singaporean.
Yeah, TikTok, exactly. The TikTok.
Oh, that one.
Yes. Yes.
Singaporean.
Yes.
I think that it has some kind of associations. Is that you being Asians has association with you being from a communist country, and since if you're from a communist country, then there's always a possibility that you might be like a spy or something. You're gonna come here, come to America, you're gonna steal anything that we have, go back, report. You know, you're always gonna be loyal to your communist country, regardless of like if your country is still in a communist government type or not. Like, just because you're Asians, you are going to be associated with that, so you're going to be very loyal to your country.
Right.
This a little bit might come because my country is also a communist country, and I am very loyal to my country, but I swear to God, it's not because it's a communist country. Like, FBI, listen to me, FBI. It's not because of my communist country. I just love my people. That's it, I promise.
Yeah. It's like,
Yeah,
why
it's just
is
weird.
It,
like,
why is it bad to be proud of be Chinese or Vietnamese, but you can be proud to be French or Italian or Russian?
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
Yeah. Because they're communist? Like, it doesn't make sense.
They always consider
if you want to,
that you start to be a little bit too enthusiastic about your own country if you're Asian.
I mean, we could go back and be like, "You're proud to be Italian." Does that mean you're a fascist?
Exactly. Exactly. Although some of these guys from Long Island, maybe a little bit.
I think it is worth. I think I do want to put the footnote here that depending on what culture you're being proud of, it might be worth asking why.
So, like, if you're German.
Yeah, you know, proud to be German, that's fine. Italian, Japanese, that's great. But like, what exactly about that? Why
Okay, but
are you
like,
proud?
how
'Cause
proud?
if we're skipping a certain like part of history, that's fine, right? Especially with like being Japanese, like there's a lot of like imperial Japanese, like, you know, parts of history where like they did a lot of bad shit.
But, okay,
you know, it's
like,
like this
like
great.
contemporary. If you're like proud to be contemporarily like Japanese or German or Italian, it's probably fine.
Oh, now it's cool.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Hopefully.
Now everyone wants our food.
Yeah, people like our food now.
Yeah.
Our food is exotic. It's so good.
Oh, that's one thing that makes me upset about our food being so loved now is the fact that oxtail is no longer cheap.
Yeah.
That's so
we have in
bad.
common with the African American community, actually.
Yeah, that was that too. Yeah, so we just doubled up, and I'm just like, I'm saddened. I am sad.
My heart breaks
I
every
miss-
time I see like a fucking deconstruct bowl of pho in like a 7-Eleven or something, or like a very westernized versions of Asian food.
Do you
You
know how
guys like the
pissed I am,
Fo-Rito?
like-
Because I was condemning the Fo-Rito. My chat was yelling at me about it. They like the Fo-Rito.
I
have
hate
opinions
Reno?
on
What
sushi.
the hell is it?
All right, we're gonna step back a few steps first. First off,
Okay.
deconstructed pho
Yes.
at 7-Eleven.
Yes.
Huh?
I have seen it like once. I'm like, what is this? First of all, why deconstructed? Second of all, why 7-Eleven?
I mean,
was
if
like-
anyone would do it,
It's basically a noodle salad of pho.
Oh, my soul is in pain. Granted, I have seen them try to do like a bun me salad. And, oh my god,
ugh.
What a bun me
soul.
That's just bun.
Yeah.
There was no bread. There was no bread. I don't know.
That's just the filling. The filling by itself is not going to become about me. What?
That's why. That was the last time I saw something like that, and it pained me, my soul.
I mean, I remember when like unprocessed, like unsmoked bacon, so like regular pork belly used to be super cheap.
And now.
But I swear to God, one more like KBBQ or hot pot place opens up, and it's just like you just see something that you used to get for like a couple dollars for like a ridiculous amount, or like kalbi, for example. Like they used to be super cheap. You could get like a giant cardboard box, like stuffed with like 50 pounds of kalbi for like $40 when I was a kid. And now it's like you're gonna spend like $200.
That's crazy.
To get that same box, or like for like a pound of like freshly sliced pork belly, you're looking at $10 to $15 a pound. And this is stuff that you would get, 10 years ago for a fraction of the price it is now.
Yeah, it's like we touched on this in the food episode. Like they like the Asian food, but they want to take it and make it quote unquote healthy. They want to take the griminess out of it, and they want to put their own spin on it and make it like healthy pho, or like healthy curry, or healthy like Chinese food, clean and healthy. They want to like reinvent it basically because it's the Asian part that's grimy or gross or dirty, basically.
Well, I mean, I feel like that goes back. Goodness, I mean, that would have gone back to some of the workers inside the WRA that classified a lot of the neighborhoods as being less hygienic during a lot of those relocation efforts. And that stereotype, I feel like, has just continued on inside the zeitgeist that just think, oh, if you go to this area of town that has a lot of Asians, it's just going to smell horrible and it's going to be super dirty. And you shouldn't go to that restaurant because, they're not clean in there.
Yeah, the streets smell like fish. Meanwhile, it's the freshest fish you can get, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, fish smelling like fish. Oh my god. Crazy.
Oh my god, what? I've never heard of that before.
Big if true.
Yeah, this is the one country where you're disconnected from like the food you eat. Like in every other country, you go to the fish market and you buy fish. Here you go to Walmart and buy it like sliced up and cut and plastic wrapped.
And the idea of
so you
like
don't smell it.
Being dedicated to seafood and smelling like seafood. Oh my god, ew!
Right?
Crazy.
And I mean, let's be completely honest. Garbage will always smell like garbage. I don't care what culture you have, your garbage smells like garbage.
Yeah.
So that's always going to be a smell, okay? Like you can't, like I hate the idea of like, oh, like, and this goes into the racism regarding a lot of Asian foods where like people assume a lot of our food stinks and is unhealthy and it's dirty. And meanwhile, they line up for the gentrified version, which lacks a lot of the ingredients that actually make a lot of the food taste good.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the Chinese food scare of like what the 90s and 80s, where everyone was just terrified of MSG, even though it's salt. It's just flavorful salt.
Better salt.
Yeah. And even to this day, so many restaurants say that they don't use MSG. But if you go look at a label inside of, your bag of chips, MSG is one of the ingredients at the top of that list.
Yeah, chat, go get a bag of Doritos right now and read the ingredients.
Well, you also have to tell them that monosodium glutamate is what that means because they don't know what that is when they read it a lot of times.
Fair point.
It's true.
Thanks, Manta.
They'll read monosodium glutamate and just be like, see, no MSG. I don't see it anywhere.
Me and my buddies used to joke around. I'm like, we'd see a sign and be like, no MSG. I'm like, I ain't going in there.
Yeah, their food's terrible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their food lacks actual soul. Like, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Exactly. I'm like, there's no MSG sign here. They use MSG. We're going in.
Yeah, like the reason people were getting sick eating Chinese food because they weren't hydrating. They were eating heavily salted food that was heavily salted because they were appealing to the American palate and then not hydrating.
Yep.
By the way, all you should hydrate right now.
You're so right.
Thank
I
you.
have been, luckily.
This reminds me of a funny thing, though. when one of my buddies lived with me for a little bit. I was going through the kitchen. I'm like, oh yeah, this is where the sugar, is the salt, this is the pepper, this is the fish sauce, this is my MSG. And he's like,
Whoa.
wait, what was that? This is the MSG. He's like, I love how you just casually just like, this is my MSG. Yeah, well, why wouldn't I have MSG in my...
It's not rat poison.
I was literally about to say that, looking at you like you just pulled out a bag of poison.
Yeah, so like,
Here's my strychnine. Here's my cyanide.
exactly.
Here's my anthrax for flavor.
Here's my ricin,
Yeah,
You
put
guys
rice
know
in
a
next to
lot
my
about
rice.
poison.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a complete coincidence.
Alphabetically. Like, I will stand Anthony Bourdain any day of the week just because of how much he stood against a lot of the racist ideas behind food. Where he was very open to a lot of different cultures and how they prepared their food. And MSG was one of those things that, like, he, fought against for a long time, even till the last book that he published before he passed, where he was just like, yeah, no, that's just racism. It's not for any real reason other than people are being racist.
Bless him.
We rock with Anthony because Anthony rocks with us.
Yeah,
Seriously?
one of the
Invited
best
to the Asian
ambassadors for
cookout.
Asian food there is, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Gordon Ramsay tries, but
Eh.
Did you see him try to make pad thai in front of a Thai chef?
oh my god, that was traumatizing.
The way he looked at him, if any of my elders looked at me that way, I would never cook again.
I feel so embarrassed for him.
Dishonor on you, dishonor on your house, dishonor
Dishonor on your cow. Like, oddly enough, I think one of the most interesting episodes about food that I ever saw was when the three quote unquote most racist dudes in the automotive industry, the guys of Top Gear, because everyone says Jerry McClarkson's a horrible human being. They were doing this tour of Vietnam, and he made pho on his boat, and like had gone to classes to like actually learn, and like went to locally sourced ingredients and like shared a lot of that story and how like he appreciated the food so much. And I'm just like, sometimes you hear it from the most unexpected place. I'm watching a car show and I'm being educated about food.
Like
Even
anybody,
broken
if they
clocks
put
can
in
be
the
right
effort-
twice a day.
Yeah.
I think we're saying different things. Sorry, go ahead, Atra.
I mean, like anybody, if they put in the effort, they can learn. They can be a good ambassador for this sort of thing. You don't have to be Asian to like be a good citizen for this sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think we can kind of go into the final part of the episode, I suppose.
What you got?
So this is sort of about the generational divide and sort of the politics. So here we go. Younger, college-educated API people that skew heavily liberal often find themselves at odds with older, more conservative Asians, both from the post-1965 generations as well as more recent immigrants. Do the quote-unquote blue API generation do enough to understand the conservative and moderates in the community, or do those older generations need to get with the times, quote-unquote? There is no right or wrong answer here, as these issues there are many divides, as the divides are numerous.
I like to jump in because for Vietnam, we have like a very, very large cultural divide just between the North and the South due to the Vietnam War back in the past, or more like the Civil War between the North and the South. Within my own family, we have my stepfather who, because of the Vietnam War, and he was one of the Southern soldiers, he ran away to America 50 years ago. And even to this day, I kid you not, every dinner time, every time I just speak to him, he would always put in some sort of like mocking jokes about how I'm a communist and I should like bleh myself, me and both my moms, and very bad things he would keep saying about Vietnamese people, like casually. He say it as casually as he breathed. And I know that he has a lot of trauma and from the wars. I have tried my best to be very understanding to his point of view, and every time, or more like every often, me and my mom will try to sit him down and try to have a conversations about how even though the current government system may not be ones that he agrees with, but everybody is living in peace. Like there's really nothing that is like separating our mindset from the just like we are living in peace, we are happy. Nobody is forcing anybody to do anything. The government is not forcing you to do anything besides the fact that things that just keep you safe, like hey, don't kill each other, guys, haha. But it is for some reason very, very difficult for him to accept that fact. And every single word that we have ever spilled out of our mouth will always be something like a communist propaganda. And I know that it's not just my father. Many of the more elder Vietnamese populations in America, like in California, perhaps, is very divided because of of their mindset of the old government system and the new government system. Like I kid you not, there is a specific way that you should be speaking in when you're speaking to Vietnamese people in America. Like if you use certain words, they will know like, oh, you just came over from Vietnam, didn't you? You're one of them communist bitches, aren't you?
Oh no.
Yeah, like my friend legit was having a very lovely conversation with her boss until she accidentally used one of the newer Vietnamese kid slang. Her boss attitude flipped 180 and starts yelling at her, kicking her out, and like threatened to call the police on her.
That's
because
crazy.
she was quote unquote like like a communist, one that sold their countries. Have you ever or at least in my city, at least in Chicago, but how often do you notice a Vietnam flag being hung up? In my city in Chicago, I do not see any Vietnamese flag being hung up at all because there are two flags. There is the current red flag with the yellow star, and then there's the old flag of the old government system. That is the yellow flag with the 3 red stripes. And you really can't put one or the other up because the other side will usually find a way to drag it down. That will cause some real problems within the community if one is hung up. Like they might burn it, they might start a protest, they might just start like go to your house and start screaming at you. It is not fun. We are already a community that's divided in this country, and we are further dividing ourselves just because of our political differences that really doesn't matter anymore because nobody's being hurt. There are no war. Everything is at peace. But for some reason, we are trying to keep up. We are trying to fight a war that no longer exists. Just thinking like, oh my god, we gotta fight against the communists. Ah! Nobody's caring about that anymore. So speaking as a younger generations that did not experience war against somebody that I guess that has, and it's like very old school. I have tried my best to understand, and I don't think a lot of their populations has put in the effort to try and understand in return.
I mean, I feel like
50 years. It's been 50 years. It literally has been 50 years.
It's been 50 years. Yeah, like literally just like 2 hours ago I was having dinner with him, and we were preparing dinner, and he sees it. He's just like he's singing songs that were sung back in the days by the Vietnamese soldiers that were basically crying over the fact that they lost their government. He sing that song every day in my presence. It gets annoying after a while. I just like imagine myself as deaf.
But you like take care of this man, and like your mom takes care of this man. I don't get his mindset, honestly.
Exactly. Oh, he insults our cultures a lot, and it's especially hurtful to me because I really adore my family. I really adore my my cultures a lot. I love being a Vietnamese person, and like he just insults them so often. For the most random thing also, because I feel like he's getting old, so like he's probably getting a little bit delusionals. But like, oh yeah, egg prices, that's Vietnamese fault. COVID, that's Vietnamese fault somehow. My car is broken, that's Vietnamese fault. That guy cut in front of me in traffic, he's blind, he can't see who they are, but they're probably Vietnamese. Probably work at the nail salon too, huh? That's it, literally his sentences.
What the?
Yeah, dude's lost in the sauce for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, he
I mean,
is so lost in his sauce.
I feel like it kind of, and I see it being mentioned in chat, but I feel like, we've had this reciprocal movement, like back to, especially with what Atra meant, where it's like, oh, China, right? China, communism. Where we've kind of gone back to like the Red Scare and McCarthyism and Reagan era politics, where it's just, if they're different, it's a problem, right? Where a lot of people, like we talked about earlier, like a lot of people can't tell what we are, right? Where we are subjected to a lot of these extremely overgeneralized and in the end really hurtful ideas, where it's just like, oh no, we're going to associate you with this idea versus who you are actually as a person, right?
Especially if you show any sort of like pride in being Vietnamese or Chinese, whatever it is. Like they will love you if you like sell out and be like, no, I'm American. Like
America, love
the
McDonald's.
Trump White House has so many Asians in it. Like none of them are going to be like saying like, I'm proud to be Chinese, I'm proud to be Indian, I'm proud to be like,
They're always
Vietnamese.
as a proud American that just so happens to have my last name as like Nguyen or like an Asian last name. Yeah, just so happens,
Just
but I'm a proud American.
Yeah.
I mean, this is where I get crucified.
No, I'm sorry, Coot.
You're fine. So I am very how do I say it?
You do this.
I have a more central view on a lot of topics. I like to call myself more of a libertarian. I when it comes to a lot of political leanings, I'm a liberal conservative or a conservative liberal, whatever you'll have there. Where personally, like I try to go on an issue by issue basis, right? And one of the things that I ran into a lot when I was in college was that there is a giant echo chamber that happens in a lot, where you have a lot of these ideas being thrown, and while some of them may start in a really good place, it echoes so resoundingly because there's no opposing view that will even be tolerated, that it gets to be a lot more extreme than originally intended, right? I've always tried to have a fairly diverse group of people around me, where I try to surround myself with different viewpoints to kind of see where people are coming from. And that's, I feel like, something that's frowned upon more and more, where it's like, oh, if you don't agree with me, then you're obviously a fascist, or oh, if you don't agree with me, then you're obviously not very well versed or studied, or you must be an idiot, right? And I feel like having that stance of being able to look at issues and seeing what's going on from multiple viewpoints is being less it's being frowned upon more now, where a lot of people will just be called fence sitters, for example, right? Where it's like, no, I'm not on a fence, I just want to see what's really happening from both sides.
Well, here's why I asked this question, actually, Cootie. So I'll give you an example. Like, let's take this scenario, for example, actually. Here in New York City, a lot of Asian American communities protest opening homeless shelters in their neighborhoods. The standard liberal orthodoxy is you should welcome the housing of homeless people in your community. Everyone needs housing. And if you oppose this, then you have issues with racial justice or equal housing or homeless people. Now, how do the people who are liberal or blue or push affordable housing talk to conservative Asian people, like in your view, I guess?
I don't think that that's really a conservative viewpoint specifically towards older Asians, and I'll tell you why.
Right. This is not older Asians, by the way. This is both older Asians and like newly arrived immigrants as well.
Yeah.
are on this on
Well-
opposing diametric. Yeah.
So that kind of is going to reinforce what I'm about to say. Do you see homeless shelters in like Korea or Japan?
No.
Do you see homeless beggars in Korea or Japan?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's more of a recent thing because so a lot of times what would happen is that because it's a social construct based around community and hierarchy, a lot of East Asian communities don't do the whole like giving money to the homeless. It's they will build their own homes off to the side, typically in areas where they won't be seen by the general public. And they'll do things, and I'm sure you see it all the time in New York, where they will go around collecting cans, so that way that they can get some kind of income, right? Homelessness is seen more as an individual problem in those countries versus as a problem for the community inside the US. And I feel like that's where the disconnect happens, where it's not necessarily like a conservative view, it's just a cultural view for a lot of, specifically what I'm talking about are going to be like, you know, some Chinese, depending on the region, Korean and Japanese, like it's more of a pick yourself up and, you know, make it work kind of attitude versus, you know, trying to have that assistance, because a lot of older Asians and newly immigrated Asians will not want that kind of assistance because it's kind of seen down upon to take something like that.
Like taking handouts. We don't like
Yeah.
handouts.
Yeah, maybe I'm not phrasing this correctly, I guess.
What was that?
I have no idea.
I mean, I honestly think it's just a cultural difference on how each side sees homelessness, in all honesty.
Let me put it like this way. I think that like young liberal Asians have a hard time speaking to conservative Asians and tend to disregard them as a result. And I wonder what your perspective is on that, I guess, is my question.
I feel like it kind of goes back to the idea where, well, one, boy, let me tell you, Asians in general, when they have an idea in their head, it's kind of, we're all little, you know, we're all little hard-headed, right? in our beliefs. We're very zealous in our beliefs, and I feel like it kind of goes back to that idea of if you don't agree with me, you're obviously uneducated versus the other side, right? And I feel like a lot of it comes back as like talking down to the other side, where I feel like people may not intentionally do it, but it just kind of becomes this fight back and forth of like, well, you should listen to me, because if you listen to me, you'd understand, right? And there's not a lot of nuance that's happening between the two.
I think I agree with that. I mean, just look at the Vietnamese thing. Like, 50
Yeah.
years and no one can see any nuance. Like,
Yeah.
material,
Yeah.
it's changed so much in 50 years, and it's the same war being fought, basically.
Like,
Yeah.
There's very
Sorry,
little
yeah.
gray in a lot of communities.
Yeah.
It's most topics are very black or white. It's either right or wrong, and there's not much of a middle ground for a lot of those topics.
Yeah, where I'm at, there is a very large Vietnamese community, and I can tell you, they have still not gotten over it.
Yeah.
50 years ain't enough. They are going to bring it to their grave.
Like,
There are
it's still
those
fresh in their mind. They bring it up every single day.
Hmm.
And I mean, Koreans have a special word for that, which is Han, which is a form of genetic generational trauma And it's one of the reasons why, it's like, oh, Korean people can be very sad, right? And we're depressed is because of all of the things that have happened inside the past, right? And that kind of gets, in a way, because of how important that history is, it kind of gets beaten into our heads when we're young. And as we get older, like, yeah, that there's that gray cloud over us a lot. And breaking that is something that's extremely difficult. And I feel like that definitely contributes a lot to why, even like you said, after 50 years, this is still something that is still being, talked about. And it's, Koreans call it Han, but I'm sure that every, culture has a different word for that.
Absolutely, great point.
Yeah, we definitely have some sayings that definitely have that vibe.
Yeah, I think every community has like that sort of red wire. Like Indians have Modi versus like the liberals, secularists. Filipinos have Duterte. It's a lot of politics for the most part. And
Yeah, Vietnamese used to call them the Ba Wea, which is just literally means 3 stripes.
I've actually been to like some like when I was in college and going to like community events for like Asian American stuff, you would see like the three stripe flag, but you would not see the other one.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have had arguments with like classmates back in high school in America over that. They're like, I was like, that the current Vietnamese flag is like red and yellow, like with the stars, right? They're like, no, my parents taught me that it's the yellow flag with the stripes. It's never gonna be the other one. What are you talking about? That doesn't exist.
It was
It's
funny
very
last year when I was doing like the thank you for this like this series. So obviously I was putting everyone's flag on the poster, and I was going to put the red Vietnamese flag on the poster, and then I'm like, wait a minute.
I know, it's so typical with any
So
flag on
then,
at all.
I took the red stripe flag and I cut it in half, like diagonally, and put half an American flag on it. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So at the end, I just put the red stripe flag and the star flag on it on the poster, which I'll do again this year, basically.
Yeah, like it's a good compromise.
Yeah, it's a compromise.
It's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I was gonna say, like as my gen, we were a lot of the generational, the hate for the communists were they try to force feed it down us. It's just it's
They
in
really shove it down our throat.
yeah. It's like everywhere we would go, they'd just be like, "Oh, the communists! Oh, the communists! Oh, the communists!" Blah, blah. And
They're
That's the
probably
point where you're
afraid
taught
that-
to hate the North.
Honestly, they're probably afraid that that people are gonna think you're less American if you aren't like vehemently anti-communist.
Yeah.
depends on who they were, because some of them they were just legitimately afraid, and they never looked back. If they, I do believe if some of them would, open their mind a little bit and look back, they'd understand that, it's time to move on.
I wish they would just go back to Vietnam. You can go, like, get a plane ticket,
Yeah.
go see it.
Let's go. Let's go.
No one's going to arrest you when you arrive. I think most likely.
No, but you are going to
Whoa.
wish you were dead when you get to the TSA of Vietnam.
That's so funny.
You always wish you were like the TSA line. It's gonna be like 2 hours, man, minimum, unless you pay them extra.
Yeah, that's I remember every time someone be like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna go back to Vietnam." Like, bring cash with you. What? Just leave some cash in your passport.
Everybody in the TSA is gonna expect some tips so that they can like help you go along for like smoother.
Oh,
Exactly.
I didn't have to bribe them. Just let me through.
Well, it's a little
Tech
different.
privilege.
You.
Yeah, privilege. Not privilege.
They see me and they're like, "Oh, you."
Oh, he knows the game.
Yeah.
Me, I'm just a wealthy Indian businessman. I'm here to invest in your country.
And it's like I have a friend. Maybe you guys know of him. His name is his gamer tag is Mart, that he
Markiplier?
owned a huh?
Markiplier?
McGuire?
No, Marn, Marn.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
He's Vietnamese. But he so we know each other from competitive fighting games over years, and like we hung out a whole bunch, and I've made a whole bunch of friends, but like he actually took a lot of money that he made here in the States to reinvest back inside Vietnam, making things like PC cafes, right? And like
Oh yeah. That's
bring like he, because of his links with sponsorships through like his team and his own stuff, like he was able to bring like a lot of tech in without necessarily paying as much out of pocket, right? Because the cafe got sponsored up, but like kind of seeing like how a lot of those guys can kind of come back, and because he's also immigrated from Vietnam, and just kind of having that investment back into the community that he came from, right? Is really nice to see. But like it's kind of interesting to see like how that money kind of circulates versus like how money's treated in different cultures, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Kudi, did you have anything else in your list of questions?
No, actually, we ended up wrapping a lot of the questions in between as like facts and things.
I told you, like you'd work it in naturally in the conversation. It was not too verbose.
Yeah. I looked at the giant list of things and I was just kind of like, yeah, sorry guys.
You see what it comes down to is like the amount of history that we could talk about in 2 hours is so dense and heavy. And it could be just forever and ever, but the big points at the end of the day really are like there is a lot of displacement in our history, and there is a lot of like tension and trauma, and there's a lot of like talking to each other that the generations need to do. And it's really hard to say whether we will continue to feel welcome and belonging in this country. But dialogue like this is important.
Yeah, I mean, like we kind of touched on it with the WRA, right? Like we kind of talked about it a little bit, but the spreading of a lot of for instance, Japanese immigrants after World War II, they just kind of lost everything, lost their careers, lost their homes, lost everything, and was like, all right, first office is opening in Chicago. You go to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of generational trauma, even with all of the community care and activism that's been given to those regions because of how forcefully they were resettled, even though now they are, citizens, like they weren't treated as such because of that. And like the benefit was that it's like, oh, hey, you could have other Asians, but the Japanese were, branded as like innocuous, right? They were, they're not harmful. They're not going to ruin the economy in your area. It's fine, guys. It's fine. And just kind of seeing how that really caused a lot of issues. Yeah.
And it was fascinating too, because like they were probably the most assimilated of Asians. They had an entire baseball league of like Japanese American players, and like their English like proficiency was really high as a community. They owned land and farms and businesses, and that still was not enough to protect them when like war broke out, basically.
Yeah, I mean, there was an entire exclusion act in California, then later adopted inside of Arizona, Washington, and I believe Oregon. And California, you got to stop doing that. Like, I feel like at this point, you're trying really hard to hide just how many things you did to hurt like the Asian population. Has so much to answer for. But originally, they actually had a ban of anyone. Originally, it was for other ethnicities, but then California started it where they were disallowed of having any farming land. They could not be an owner, and the longest lease they could possibly have was 3 years, which, if you know much about farming, you barely get started by year 3.
Mm-hmm.
So it basically stopped the accumulation of wealth and upwards movement inside the social status of a lot of Asian citizens inside of California, Arizona, Washington, Oregon, by heavily controlling this. And I mean, there was even a point where you actually, in the state of California, a judge decided he was going to become a legislator, and he interpreted the way that people can testify. And he actually made it so that the law that stopped African Americans from testifying against, I think it was African Americans, Indians, and Hispanic peoples from testifying against white defendants. It was, People versus Hall. They actually had 3 witnesses that were Chinese, and he goes, "Wow, the Chinese are kind of Indian and or black, so they can't testify against them." And yeah, just a large amount of just, man, California, you really enjoy all the Asian stuff now, but before, man, why do we stay there?
Weather.
There have been so many just random. There was a whole riot because like Filipino men were dancing with white women in the 30s.
Oh yeah, the whole demonization of marijuana was based around, don't, watch out for the devil's weed because, it'll make white women dance with Filipino men. Which also started the whole like small penises thing as well, as an anti-Asian. Yes, it was all a part of the same movement to demonize, feminize, and destroy the public view of Asian men. Racism. I swear, like every conversation we have, where it's like, "All right, guys, we're not gonna have 2 controversial topics," and I'm like, "All right, today we're gonna talk about racism."
Okay, I think I'll sort of tie it together in a nice sort of bundle though. Just sort of bring us.
No, let's just end it on racist.
What is sort of like, so as we sort of like enter our adulthood, or we are adults, of course, what is sort of your hope for the future as Asian Americans, and what is your hope for your relationship with either your homeland or your parents' homeland in the next couple of decades, so to speak? I'll start.
It's a big question.
It is a big question, I know. I'll start. I'll be honest with you guys. Like, I only know the United States. I've been born here, raised here. I only know New York, and I don't want to go anywhere else. The appeal of maybe moving to Asia is very strong for me. I don't have roots in Asia. Those roots were taken from me to 150 years ago. I would love to establish roots out there. I don't think I'm going to Guyana. And I would love to be able to continue to enjoy being an American. I find that to be sort of hard to envision the future, though, given the way things are right now. And the way, because like I was a New Yorker after 9/11. I saw the way people looked at me after 9/11. I grew up with that. And if it was to happen again, I don't think I'd stick around, honestly.
But you're not even from the same region.
I'm not, but it
That's
doesn't
the
matter
crazy
because
part.
again, you have
They don't care about that.
You have the racial uniform. You have the racial, you have the look. It doesn't matter.
Racist people don't care about the accuracy of their racism.
Exactly.
They just gotta be racist.
Exactly.
Remember
Just
how
a
we were talking
shotgun
about
approach to everybody.
Yeah. And listen, I love this country very much. I love my homeland very much. But if it comes down to it, my life is not worth it if this country doesn't value it. That's kind of where I'm at. And I know that's a kind of a dark thing to say, but that's kind of where I'm at. Like, my answer would have been so different, like maybe before COVID. But I think now
Right.
I'm hopeful. Like, listen, I'm hopeful that things will get better. But I really need like people who are change makers in this country to recognize that like a lot of us don't feel very hopeful for the future with the way that they speak about Asians right now. All right, who wants to go next? That was so much darker than I expected. Oh my god.
No, yeah, see, it's a big question. I told you.
Yeah.
I'll say that like it's actually been something I've weighed on the scales to like move to Palau and like uproot my family and go there, and especially considering political tensions and stuff like that. It's funny because like I was just mentioning how I just found out that I'm basically eligible to get a Palauan passport. My father and my grandparents are now telling me like, hey, maybe you should get an American passport just in case, so you don't accidentally get like deported to El Salvador once they find out that you're something besides American. And on top of that, there's like so many other factors when it comes to like, especially like just the islands, because the islands are not nearly as developed as even like some, you know, like Asian countries. And one huge factor is things like access to like modern medical care. And it's not like there's like, it's not that it's not like modern, that there's no modern healthcare in Palau, but it is more like I do have like a child who has like serious medical needs and stuff like that, and there has been a time in their life where like if we didn't have access to like state of the art medicine, like they might not be around type stuff. Right. And so it's not like so easy to just kind of like decide, oh, you know, I can just like basically, you know, like cut off all ties here and go to Palau. Like in a more perfect world, if that weren't the case, it'd be a lot easier, right? But there's just like I've come to learn, just like especially just being like as a parent and like having like a bigger scope, that there's like a lot of larger factors that make people feel quote unquote stuck, despite what their heart or what their desires might actually want.
That's a great point, honestly.
I like to think I have a really fortunate and weird situation. So I mean, I do enjoy a lot of the things that this country has to offer, but if, well, like Atra said, where it's let's say, heaven forbid, North Korea loses its mind, right?
Oh yeah.
And they decide to, you know, wage war, and their allies decide to join with them. Being Korean is not going to be great in the U.S. at that point. But going back to Korea is also not a great idea either.
They will be at war. Yeah.
So, like, the next option I really have is my girlfriend actually is a dual citizen of Japan, and I'm like, you know, I speak enough Japanese to get by. And oddly enough, land prices inside Japan aren't really terrible.
Oh yeah, I've seen.
If you ever want to go check out pricing, and it's hilarious, go to Akiya Mart, AKIYA. They actually put a bunch of properties out there, and while can I say an expletive real quick? Atra, I want to get your okay before I do it.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, fuck
we're
Johnny
leaving
Somali.
the PG-13.
Johnny Somali, you are allowed to say fuck Johnny Somali on this podcast.
Yeah.
Even though there are certain people like him and Ice Poseidon and a bunch of other fuckheads that have been ruining tourism in a lot of countries. One, they're fucking around and finding out, and two, unfortunately, it is causing a lot of issues towards non-natives. Now, fortunately, there are certain countries like Japan where they do actually still want to bring in people, because birth rates are a problem. So, yeah, I feel like if things went down, granted, not that far away from Korea still, kind of still somewhat in the crossfires.
In the range of the missiles, yes.
Yeah. But at least there's an option, right?
Yeah.
But
I also speak Japanese, so I will be hitting you up for more information after this.
Japan said the birth rate's getting too low. Unleash the Gaijin hunters.
Gaijin hunters are crazy. I was gonna say I got a buddy out in Tokyo if you need some help.
Funny story. Her family does have a vacant apartment in Tokyo that we would probably be staying at.
Well, chat, we're
There
moving to
we go.
Tokyo.
You're all set.
Like my friend Haru and I have joked about it a few times, where we see a lot of these old family estates on places like Ikea Mart, and you're talking about like acreage in Japan, which is crazy, because there's not a lot of land. But buying acreage with like an old family estate, which has several bedrooms, large living spaces, and beautiful woodworking for like $60K. And I'm like, I couldn't buy a car in the US for $60K. Like, hold on a second. Like, maybe this isn't looking so bad. But there are also programs to help relocate and a bunch of other stuff, because they are looking for entrepreneurs to come, and there's obviously birth rate incentives that are going around. But no, like my big thing has always been like I would like to try to stay for as long as the country will have me. But if there's a large political shift that would cause me to become displaced, I at least have 2 places I could go, and I'm fortunate for that. But
absolutely.
But yeah, no, like like I said, like I'd like to stay here as much as possible. I think that there's definitely some interesting changes that are going about, and hopefully the country improves, and we could hopefully eventually make racism less of a thing. But as long as fear mongers on both sides continue to do exactly that, to keep the common masses at each other's throats, I don't think that that's going to happen.
I agree with that.
So,
Booty did bring something up that makes me want to change my answer just a little. Despite what I said, if America does start partying a little too much like 1930s Germany, I will be a taro farmer tomorrow. Like, I will be in Palau like before the next fiscal quarter, I swear to God.
And it's funny you say that you need a stable income. There's actually entire programs in a lot of East Asian countries that are like, oh, you speak mostly English? We'll help you because we need English speakers at like Wendy's or KFC or, multiple places, or places that don't necessarily need an English, that don't need a fluent language speaker.
Oh, I was almost a JET student.
Yeah. So like, for instance, in Japan, you can start becoming a traffic director.
Bro,
and you don't need to speak any...
Throw taro than work in the service industry.
Real.
But like the thing is like they do give livable wages for a lot of that stuff. So it's like, it's not as crazy of a thought as people think, because it is infinitely harder to start in the United States than it is some other countries.
I don't think it's the wages for Atcha though.
Lord knows, I don't want to be a traffic director. You think I can fit between cars that are driving on a road? Hell no, they're all going to hit me.
You'll be the hell.
Every single side mirror is just going to slap me on the ass.
They'll think you're in a fixed pylon. It's fine.
Well, yeah, no, I do feel like I said, like it's just America with its extreme for-profit housing and its abundant what's the word I'm looking for, because I'm going into Korean, taking advantage of with how much we take in, well, not we, but how much the American economy takes advantage of people of lower class or of lower income to...
Susie says capitalism.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah. Basically, due to extreme, consumerism and capitalism, exploitation is what I was looking for. Due to the exploitation of these groups, between continuing the narrative of, oh, you need all these flashy things so that you can't ever accumulate wealth. Also, we'll never teach you how to manage wealth inside the United States, inside of our own education system, because that would be empowering you to move your social status.
We can't have that. No.
Not to mention dismantling any form of generational wealth that, our communities might try to accumulate.
Yeah, yeah. It's like you can't accumulate generational wealth. No, we can't have that. You got to stay down there, right? As these systems are continued to be exploited to do these things, honestly, I just don't see how a lot of people eke out a living without being several generations inside of one home, without trying to get several families inside of one home, to just be able to have a place to live to start and not even worry about surviving. They're just worrying about housing at first. And then once they have housing, then they can, afford the luxury of making sure that they can survive.
It's funny you mentioned that. Like, Asians actually have, well, some Asians have the highest, like, household wealth in the country. It's not because they're necessarily really wealthy. It's because we have multiple working adults in the same house, because you don't get kicked out when you turned 18 for the most part.
Yeah. And I mean, that kind of touches up on another topic that you'll have later on this week regarding being the eldest child, right?
Yes. Yep.
In a lot, like in Korean households, the eldest child is, supposed to take after, their parents. That's what I do. But because of that, they have their retirement, everything that they can, take care of, and I take care of everything else, right? It's a dynamic that, one, a lot of people in the Western mindset don't really understand, and is typically shown as like being like, oh, you don't know how to live by yourself. You're not self-sufficient. You're etc. And there's a giant stigma around taking care of your family inside the U.S. for like even in some Asian communities. Actually, it just kind of depends on how they were raised. But it's crazy to see these giant rifts that continue in us versus them mentality that is really just there to keep people down and stop them from being able to raise their status in the future.
100% agreed. Great points, honestly.
Maybe I won't get canceled on Twitter now.
Google Docky.
Google Docky.
So, in case chat's wondering, I did in fact ask Cootie here as co-host because Cootie is a moderate and has sort of talks sort of about sort of like the left-right divide and sort of the sort of way I find Cootie like helps me to challenge my beliefs, and that's why I really value him as a friend and like co-host, actually, in case you guys are wondering. I was not blindsided by Cootie's beliefs. Which honestly aren't that controversial anyway, by the way, Chad, so I'm not like...
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm that, ridiculous or outlandish. I feel like I have fairly grounded views. But,
Yeah,
like I said, it's...
agree.
I just feel like, once again, it's just a... Politics aren't sports, guys. It's not my team versus your team, And I feel like that's what a lot of politicians want. It's either you're with us or you're against us, and I hate that mentality.
Team China.
Yeah, exactly.
Team conservative,
Ooh, I disconnected. Sorry there.
Oh, I was like, what's in my ear?
It's my intro.
I didn't fully register. I was like, what was that?
But yeah, I did want to ask the rest of you about sort of where you see your place in this country over the next couple of, years, decades and such, and what your relation would be to your homeland.
Oh, I'm gone. Like the second I have some unfinished business that I have to take care of while I'm in America. But once those are done, I am out of here. Like nothing is holding me back. I got no chains and balls on these speaks. I am running back to my countries.
Susu's in her Kill Bill arc.
Yes. But like the economy on this current state, and I can only imagine it's gonna get worse from here. I am just going to take I'm already a freelancer online. I'm gonna take my money. I'm gonna run back because like where else in the world I cannot get 8 fresh steam oyster for like $1.25 in America. But that is the last meal I ate in Vietnam before I ran and before I had to go back to America here. Every day I keep thinking about that. Like, you know how much $20 can get you through a week in Vietnam?
So
It's
much.
So
much.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
much. I literally just want to go back. Like I can survive for $20 a week, and I can make like $500 a week. I'd be living the richest life I always wanted for me and my mother. That's all I'm asking for. I'm out of here. Y'all ain't never gonna see me back in Chicago. Goodbye the Bean. Goodbye the White House. Goodbye everything. Goodbye everything in America.
Goodbye the
I mean,
weed.
I
Goodbye the whacker.
Goodbye, the
It's in
bean is
Chicago.
insane.
Goodbye the Bean. Goodbye Chicago deep dish pizza.
Goodbye,
hot
deep dish
dogs with
pizza.
ketchup.
Goodbye the bears.
Yeah.
Da
Goodbye
bears.
Garrett popcorn. I am gonna put ketchup on my hot dogs again the moment I leave this place.
That is literal heresy.
No. You don't understand how gorgeous it is to have ketchup on a hot dog. Chicagoans are just crazy. They don't know what they're
No.
talking
Yeah,
about.
that is crazy. Put ketchup on hot dogs.
Yeah.
Ketchup on hot dogs is good.
Yeah,
What do you
it's
I
so
bet you
good.
call a Chicago dog a salad, Atra.
Deep dish pizza is overrated. Let me tell you that as well. Then
Oh, it
pizza
absolutely
is the
is.
actual Chicago pizza here. Only tourists get a deep dish pizza. I
Look-
do not and miss it.
Let's be real. There are too many Asians that are lactose intolerant to really deal with deep dish pizza in Chicago.
Exactly. Yeah. Like
That
all
might
of
be
y'all
true, but Mama
cheese
didn't
make
raise
me
no bitch.
poopy
So.
Anyway, I don't need y'all.
You don't think I'll eat an entire one by myself? I'll do it. I'll just die afterwards.
Oh yeah, and like Chad said, goodbye.
It's not me
the
being
Pope.
stuck in here with you guys. It's you guys stuck in here with me. Sorry.
Goodbye the Pope. Crazy.
Goodbye, Pope.
Not my mod taping from Chicago, just sipping on her thing.
Now it's a cardinal sin because
Get
I'm
out.
from Chicago.
You know what? I'm gonna go to hell. I'm gonna go tomorrow. I'm gonna go to the nearest Walmart. I'm gonna get some hot dog buns. I'm gonna get a hot dog. I'm gonna get all the fixing that you would normally get on the Chicago dog, and I'm gonna slather ketchup on it, like
it.
in the bun, on the actual hot dog, on the actual sausage, everywhere. The Pope's gonna come to my house by himself and just like. I hope heaven will forgive you because I don't. God will
Are we
forgive
still
you.
talking about
I
food?
won't.
Yes, we are.
Just gonna walk around the corner with a giant like dragon slayer sized chancla and be like, may heaven may forgive you, but I will not. My child.
I'm sorry for the derailment. I have
No,
a
you
lot
are
of
you are so
I'll go
fine.
down.
You are completely fine.
You're good.
we always get derailed by food on this podcast. Trust me.
Honestly, I want that picture of that hot dog with the ketchup on it.
But Yui, how about you?
I think my position's a little bit different. I probably won't be going anywhere unless things really, really hit the fan. Mainly because I feel a need to take care of my patients that are here. So no matter until like I cannot anymore, I want to try to take care of people. It's what I do, and knowing that I can't do that elsewhere because I only know medicine here and up to the point of how much I know. If I go to another place, it'll be really hard for me to continue this job. Going back to Vietnam would be hard in its own way. I'd have to avoid certain areas because, like I said, I'm avoiding the
whatever
ex-wife.
city they live in, just move. Oh, also, cities have merged in Vietnam now. A lot of major cities have merged.
Merged? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear so many things that are different now where I'm more open to the idea of it than back in the day. Back in the day, it'd be like, a 1 in a million chance of running into my ex-wife? No, thank you. And I was like, you know what? Maybe we'll consider it.
I
She
think
stays
it's a lovely
over there.
country. I think it's one
Yeah.
of my favorite places I've visited, honestly.
I mean,
Like I can definitely like empathize with Yui's idea of like not wanting to abandon his patients. Like I actually work in the medical field as well. I just do it from the cybersecurity standpoint, and I work with medical manufacturers to secure their equipment. Luckily, some of the manufacturers I work with are still in Japan, so I'll be able to do that, and some of them are in Korea, so I'll be able to do that. So, like, I can definitely see what you're saying.
Yeah, it's my whole thing was like, I remember someone once to ask me, they're like, "Hey, you know, what would you do if your job was no longer needed?" I'd be like, "I'd be happy. If people no longer needed me to function as a healthcare worker, that means people are healthy. They no longer need me. I will find another job. I do this because I want to, like, you know, help other people."
The Nui really becomes an apothecary.
Well, the thing is, I'm also that one apothecary too. You know, every once in a while you go into the apothecary and run into that guy who's just an absolute dick. That's also me.
Dr. House, is that you?
Yeah. Oh, it's like sometimes we need to do it because it's like, look, you guys, you need to be an adult, and adults. You need to be responsible for yourself. I cannot be there to babysit you every time.
But Papa.
It's like, no. Only this time.
Yeah, you know, I will say this. I know, like, mine was kind of in a dark place. I'll say this. In thinking of a dark place, I also think of all of the Asian Americans that came before us and people who faced even darker times than us. War, famine, destruction, violence, racism. Think of the No-No Boys during the war and the internment. Think of labor organizers like Larry Talong. Think of, like, the congressmen and congresswomen that, like, went to Capitol Hill and legislated for our rights. Men like Bhagat Singh Thind, Wong Kim Ark, who went to before the Supreme Court to fight for our rights. Like, we are on the shoulders of giants and brave people, and if they can be brave, then I can be brave too. So at the end of the day, while things are dark, we as a community have so many icons we can look to. So those are my final thoughts on that.
Beautifully put.
Yeah.
But
I'm gonna give our guests a chance to do some plugs and tell us what they have going on to wrap up today's episode. Starting with Cutie, what you got going on?
Hey, for you guys that don't know where to find me, super easy, just Cootie VT on Twitter and on Twitch. I will be doing a big run of 2v8 on DVD here soon because Oni just got released on 2v8, so it's time for me to scream and listen to Europop while I drift around the rift.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Cootie, thank you again for co-hosting with me and coming with some just amazing questions and bringing so much historical context to this. You were an absolute joy to co-host this with, and I look forward to collaborating with you on stuff like this many more times.
Yeah, no, honestly, thank you so much for having me. Unfortunately, I think that my image as a himbo might have been cracked or shattered at this point.
Exposed.
Damn it. But I always love having these kinds of conversations, and you know, it's one of those things where you know, I act like, you know, brain empty, no thoughts behind my eyes, because a lot of people are really uncomfortable with a lot of the things that, you know, we talk about in some of these chats. And you know, it's refreshing to be able to really talk about it and kind of go into the issues a little bit more and go into the history and how that relates to a lot of things. And you know, some of that that uncomfortability comes from the somehow unfamiliar people are with a lot of the topics, just because, like I said, the U.S. education system in general really plays down the Asian contribution to the enrichment of a lot of cultures inside the U.S. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you guys liked hearing from Cootie, you can check out last year's episode. It is currently uploaded to YouTube as part of the Asian American and Canadian Vtuber network, which is a newly launched umbrella organization that is going to sort of help to boost Asian American and Canadian VTuber programming. That'll be last year's VTuber Talks and this year's VTuber Talks. The YouTube link is in the side chat and will be in the show notes as well. By the end of this weekend, all past and future episodes will be uploaded to YouTube. Next up, we've got Manta. What you got going on?
Once again, I'm Manta Ray. I go by Manta Ray VT on all platforms. Really, I am kind of putting a lot of my content on the back burner. I am taking care of a lot of real life stuff right now. I even usually do my own like AAPI streams, but I've decided not to this year just to really kind of respect what I've got going on my plate. But if you ever like anybody that's loud and very opinionated, come check me out. And I'm definitely going to try to get back onto the content grind by next year.
Thank you, Manta, for joining us today. As Manta mentioned, they also had an API series over the last couple of years. I've met so many great API streamers, including Princess, who rated in today through Manta, and I'm very grateful for that. And also very grateful to know Manta as well. Thank you for sharing so much about your heritage and background, and frankly, you're probably the best Palauan VTuber I know.
I know I'm the best Pawn VTuber, and that's what really warms my heart. But thank you again. That appreciation goes both ways. It's been an honor to be a guest on here, and I would do so anytime you'd asked.
Absolutely. All right, Susu, how about you?
Susuo Wu, like you remember, I am a VTuber, but during this year, I have been putting all of my streaming activities on the back burner to put more focus onto my career as an animator. So look forward to a lot more animations coming from me, both live 2D animations in video games and also just 2D animations for I don't know, certain projects that will be discussed in the futures. And I'm also going to be attending MomoCon, which is going to be happening next week. If anybody of you are going, make sure to see me there. You will be able to find me wearing a Hatsune Miku jacket and also a glass mask because you cannot see my face. I don't want to show you my face. But thank you so much for having me on this. It is always a joy to be able to talk about my experience as a younger members in the Asian Americans community, and it is so thoughtful of you to host this so that we all have a place to share our opinions and our experience.
Thank you very, very much. It was so refreshing and amazing to talk to you, honestly. I have not really had a conversation like this with someone with your experience, and I really very much enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Susu.
Thank you.
Yeah. And last but not least, Uncle Yuichi Aizawa, the meandering otaku. What have you got going on?
That's a lot of titles.
Esquire.
Esquire. Yes, it is. Honestly, this year I don't really have too much going on. I will be just doing regular streams. I'm still kind of waiting for the whole the rig to be finished. Until the rig is finished, I'm holding back on a lot of the content that I'm trying to put through, mainly the uncle content, because it'd be more fun to have it rigged properly. So I think it'd be more onto the theme. But other than that, I am writing more, so I've been doing a lot of writing streams when I am not being dragged around by the nieces and nephews. Yeah.
Never. You would never escape.
No, I just need breaks every once in a while so I can write so that my readers don't try to kill me.
As Yui mentioned, Yui is the elder statesman of a crew of younger VTubers. He is beloved, he is the uncle, and it's always great to hear his perspective as a healthcare worker, as like my friend, and as an older VTuber as well. So thank you so much, Yui.
Oh, no, thank you for having me. I mean, I'll tell you, whenever this time comes around, I'm like, I usually tell people, I'm like, when Atra needs me, I'm dropping everything.
I appreciate that about you, man.
Love you too, man.
Yeah, love you, man. All right, and I've been your host, Atramentum_X. You can find all my links at atramentum.inc. That's atramentum.ink. This is episode 3 of 5 of the API VTuber Talks, and we will probably have a special episode of The Depths as well, talking about sex work and Asian Americans in the porn industry as well. So the next episode will be next week. We're talking about the age hierarchy and going your own way, subverting that. Princess Roscoe will be my co-host for that one. We'll be talking all about being the eldest child, or the age order, so to speak. Yeah, so thank you guys so much. We will be rating out. We'll be rating an Asian. So we will see you guys. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.